with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, January 28th, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Alex Pareene, the owner of the AP Substack, also staff writer at the New Republic, and co-host of the podcast, The Politics of Everything. Also on the program today, Biden to name Breyer's successor quickly. But will it be quick enough?
Gotta be quick.
Gotta be quick. Meanwhile, Biden set to speak in Pittsburgh today on the bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed as a bridge collapses and injures 10 in Pittsburgh. Pramila Jayapal calls for passage of Manchin's stripped-down social spending likes, which apparently she is aware of. White House warns Ukraine to get ready as talks with Russia continue. Meanwhile, cancel culture strikes again as a Tennessee school board bans the teaching of the Holocaust novel Maus.
That's the next step in the anti-CRT push. Holocaust now, it's no joke.
Federal judge cancels a huge tranche of oil and gas leases, federal ones sold by the Biden administration. Omicron receding, but still over 2,000 people a day in this country are dying of this so-called mild cold-like virus. So much so that the White House is now mulling new COVID-related, that means limited, paid leave provisions. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday. Emma Vigeland is here, and as Emma can attest to, I am wearing a soft-collared shirt. In fact, no, you don't have a collar on that.
No
thing.
collar.
No collars on
Oh,
it.
I forgot to wear my popped collar today.
No one else is wearing a collared shirt
No.
except for me.
I'm wearing a very fuzzy sweater.
I'm not sure I own a collar.
There we go.
It's like shocking me a little bit, like against the chair. I'm getting some electric
Static?
shock. Yeah, some static. So if
all right. I thought you were saying like I don't know.
no,
Something like your fashion attire.
no.
Okay.
It's I'm getting like little zaps. So
I used to wear sweatpants all the time in high school, and I used to have this static spray that you could spray your clothes down, and it would stop the static electricity.
so committed to the sweatpants. You're wearing sweatpants right now. Used to.
I'm not as electrically charged these days.
I can only imagine the level of excitement that you had when you discovered this stuff that would eliminate the electric static from your.
Yeah, it's technology.
You're magnetized now, so maybe that's what's eliminating that static.
You know how people
Got the COVID vaccine.
sometimes are like, what if you had the ability to travel back in time? Who would you have dinner with? And for me, I think I probably would just want to follow Matt for a day when he was in high school. I just really
Follow me into my basement where I listen
just
to.
want to just see like what it's like, Matt,
Rack
going
radio. Sports talk
Matt
radio.
driving across North Dakota. I had to pick up I had to get that spray, so it took me an hour and a half to drive.
What's sports
To the
talk radio
Krugers.
like in North Dakota? Because in New York, it's pretty bad, like kind of right-wing pipeline-y. I can only imagine what it's
No,
like in North
it
Dakota.
guided me through the Iraq War. It was liberal talk radio. Out of
Liberal talk
Minneapolis.
radio.
So
Sorry.
it was sports, but it was sports talk. But they were these old liberals in Minneapolis, KFAN.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Casual Friday. We've got a lot to get to. Alex Pareene will be here. We don't have a second guest. We want to get to the phones quick.
Quick.
We're going to talk about Breyer. We have a clip. Before we get to that, though, I want to talk about this story about the leases. This is really exciting. Maybe it's not that exciting, but it just goes to show you the importance of who gets to fill the federal judiciary. We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court, but there are hundreds of other federal judges. The Biden administration has put 45, I believe it is, maybe 42 federal judges on the bench. Those are lifetime appointments. They did so in the fastest amount of time that we've seen that many judges put on the bench. There's another 40 that have already been nominated, so they're in the pipeline. The Dick Durbin, the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has followed his Republican counterparts' lead from when they had the majority, which is to ignore blue slips. Patrick Leahy did not do this. He reinstated blue slips. Blue slips are just basically these chits that the home senators have when you're appointing a judge in a district or a circuit, I should say. The senators from that state, just as a Senate tradition, because how can we make this even less democratic than it is, could say, I don't like that judge, and I'm not going to give you my blue slip. And even though it was not even a rule, it's just a tradition. After the Republicans had refused to honor blue slips, Patrick Leahy reinstated it because he wanted Senate comity. And then Durbin, when he became chair of the judiciary, he's ignoring those. Good for him. One other precedent set by the Republicans, they're batch confirming these people now. So you're seeing 4 or 5 judges being confirmed at a time. This judge, Rudolph Contreras, U.S. District Court judge for the District of Columbia, is an Obama appointee from 2012. He canceled the oil and gas leases of more than 80 million acres in the Gulf of Mexico. You'll recall that when Joe Biden campaigned in 2020, he said that he was going to stop drilling on federal lands, period, he said, when he was in New Hampshire. Shortly after office, he signed an executive order to pause the issuing of the leases. Then Republican attorney generals from 18 states sued. Federal judge in Louisiana blocked that order and ruled that the administration must hold the lease sales in the Gulf that had already been scheduled. Now, the administration could have tried to play hardball here. And by hardball, I don't mean that they would have said something. They could have just not done it.
Yeah, there had to be like this auction process by which the leases could be distributed to the people who are going to do the drilling. And the Biden administration could have just been like, yeah, we're going to hold that in.
Right. We have scheduling problems
30,
or whatnot.
55, yeah.
And now, at that point, Deb Haaland would have supposedly been held in contempt. However, environmental groups countersued, and they said that the way that the Interior Department under the Trump administration was assessing whether these federal lands were eligible to be leased for oil and gas exploration or drilling was outdated. And so the lawsuit alleged that additional drilling in the Gulf would not increase greenhouse gas emissions based upon the measure in which they used it. Like, apparently they just would, like, do you see any? No? Okay, then there's not there, or something to that effect. The analysis did not include, according to these environmental groups who sued, new information about the impact of offshore drilling on rising global temperatures. And the judge said in his ruling that the Interior Department acted arbitrarily and capriciously in excluding foreign consumption from their greenhouse gas emission. In other words, you can't decide, well, it's not going to raise greenhouse emission because we're going to sell this gas. It doesn't make any sense.
Don't you know greenhouse gas emissions, they can't cross the wall?
Yeah, no, they're not American. So it was required to do so under the 1970 National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, which says the government must consider ecological damage when deciding whether to permit drilling and construction projects. Now, theoretically, the Biden administration, it seems to me, could have had Deb Haaland run this. I mean, we saw all the stuff, that the foot dragging that we saw with the Keystone XL pipeline to work in the other direction. They could have done it this way. They didn't, and a federal judge has basically enjoined it. And I should say, though, this is sad. This part is sad. And let me do this. Scott Lauerman, spokesman for the American Petroleum Institute, which represents oil and gas companies, said in a statement, "Oh no, we're reviewing this disappointing decision, considering our options. Offshore energy development plays a critical role in strengthening our nation's economy and energy security." So, sorry, Scott.
It pays me.
And pays me. And coincidentally pays me.
He left that part out.
Exhibit number 5010 million of why judges are so important. So important. I mean, frankly, it remains to be seen if they'll pass anything from the Build Back Better. Pramila Jayapal seems to be aware of what Manchin has signed off on and wants to just pass those things and do other stuff extant. Things like universal pre-K, a couple other things I don't have right in front of me.
Yeah, I wrote it down. $550 billion in climate provisions. He's in favor of the elder care parts, according to her, the child care, the universal pre-K, all that kind of stuff. But no of child tax credit, of course. That's done. All
right. And so, those things in themselves, material benefits to people, get them passed. But beyond that, it is quite clear that the Senate is not going to allow any type of major legislation beyond, if that. And so the real reason to hold the Senate, the reason why it's so crucial, far more crucial than holding both houses at this point with Manchin and Sinema there, is because of Biden's ability to appoint judges. That is it. Let's play this clip from one of the all-time great narcissists. Also, there was a great piece that Matt Stoller wrote in his Substack Big that was complaining that people were wearing masks everywhere. No, that's not it. That was about Stephen Breyer's antitrust issues, problems. And hopefully that will be helpful to get him off the court. But the biggest issue is this guy was an incredible narcissist. It is still precarious. But here is, you know what? Let's save this for Alex. Well, I just want, we'll do this when Alex comes. Just want to remind you, this program is sponsored by one of my favorite sponsors, Sunset Lake Sabadell.
Gets weirder every time.
I know it does. I get more excited about it. Use the coupon code.
Blah, blah.
It's like a catchphrase.
Left is best. 20% off. You can go there and you get first off, they have a whole new line of flavored tinctures, and they have the 6,000 milligram bottle, which gives you a much bigger dose of Sabadell and is incredibly helpful for me, anyways, for sleeping. I still use the Solve on my legs for whatever reason when I get eczema, but I'm starting to use it for for dry skin. I never use any dry skin products, and I only do this, is going to sound weird, on my calves.
Well,
My
we know
calves are
your
the only-
calves are a precious commodity.
They're the only place that I get dry skin. And
I've
they
been
have
using that lotion.
They have the hemp lotion too.
I've been
that
using. Well, I get dry skin, like all over, so I've been using that, and and it smells so good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you also have edibles in the form of gummies and fudge. There's also smokables that are. I'm not gonna lie. I've been hitting the pre-rolls quite a bit lately. I can't quite tell the difference between like the special sauce one and this and that, but it's a nice finish to me having a little too much to drink occasionally. But they're great products, and there's a tremendous amount of integrity both in the product. You can see third-party analysis of what's in there. You also will be glad to know they have great business practices. $15 minimum wage, mostly employee-owned company. They have donated thousands of dollars to things like strike funds, to give directly. They gave over $10,000 in that promotion that we did a month or two ago. Wow. I can't remember even any time. But food banks, they do a lot of work in their community. Just a great company all around. SunsetLakeCBD.com. Check it out right now. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the program the proprietor of the AP Substack, Alex Pareene, staff writer at the New Republic, co-host of the Politics of Everything. What's your co-host's name again?
Laura Marsh.
Laura Marsh. Yeah, I just somehow I just started following her on Twitter, but a great read. That is not her. Alex, welcome to the show. Emma's here, obviously, as you can tell.
Yeah.
Hi, Sam and Emma.
Did you get rid of your beard?
Did I get rid? No, I got it. I trimmed it. It's trimmer than last you saw, perhaps.
All right.
Yours is looking good, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That was the whole purpose of that.
Yeah, no, it's total thirst.
That's why you brought it up.
Yeah. I just want to. I want to talk about your. Let's start with Breyer, but I do want to get to your piece because I thought that was such a good piece that you wrote about what's going on with COVID. But I want to talk about Breyer because this is obviously like, at the end of the day, the one thing that Joe Biden has delivered more than your typical Democratic president, at least in the modern era, is a slate of federal judges that I think out of the 40, I think something like a third of them were public defenders.
Yeah.
There's still a couple of corporatists in there, but we have a diversity, not just from, socioeconomic, to the extent that you can have that diversity, I guess, amongst, potential picks for that, but also in terms of race and ethnicity, but more, almost, more important to me is the type of law that's being practiced. Meanwhile, here is, but let's just start with Stephen Breyer making his announcement. I just want to get a rating from you on the narcissism scale where this guy is. Here is Justice Stephen Breyer, announcing his retirement. See if you can see like an image of his book in the background.
He meant women too. And we are now engaged in a great civil war to determine whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. God. See, those are the words I want. To see an experiment. And that's what he thought. It's an experiment. And I found some letters that George Washington wrote where he said the same thing. It's an experiment.
Who cares?
That experiment existed then because even the liberals in Europe, they're looking over here and they're saying it's a great idea in principle, but it'll never work. But we'll show them it does. That's what Washington thought. And that's what Lincoln thought. And that's what people still think today. And I say, I want you, and I'm talking to the students now. I say, I want you to pick just this up. It's an experiment that's still going on. And I'll tell you something. You know who will see whether that experiment works? It's you, my friend. It's you, Mr. High School student. It's you, Mr. College student. It's you, Mr. Law School students. It's us, but it's you. It's that next generation and the one after that. My grandchildren and their children. They'll determine whether the experiment still works. And of course, I am an optimist, and I'm pretty sure it will. Does it surprise you that that's the thought that comes into my mind today? I don't know, but thank you.
Now, we should say two things strike me there. He started that yesterday. He's still talking. Also, apparently, the future going to be all male again.
Yeah.
Mr. High School student, Mr. But this guy, my God, he waited till his book came out.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I mean, it's great. It's great publicity, right?
Oh, yeah. Is there any fundamental difference between that kind of person who fetishizes like the founding fathers and the American way of governance to that degree, and his own place in it for that matter, and like an adult who's just really obsessed with like Harry Potter or something like that? I mean, the commitment to the fanciful notions of our republic, it's childlike to me. And yet, and of course, like him being a part of it is helpful in that regard. And when we're talking about his narcissism,
I mean, a lot of with this is the background to a lot of debates we have over the last several years, especially escalating since Trump, is that sort of older liberals attachment to elementary school civics version of American life. Which I you know, as a person who grew up and who became an adult in the post 9/11 era, I've never been able to relate to it at all. And I can't imagine. I have to imagine it just sounds like a foreign language to people younger than me. So I don't know. I mean, Breyer is exceptional in his attachment to it, and that he's like one of the most preening, self-regarding versions of it imaginable. But it's like, it's definitely something that has a strong hold over all the people in his generation who refuse to let go of power.
And the amazing thing, like, you know, we have two types of those, two categories of those two types of people you're talking about. Like, you know, the idea that at least, you know, he's sort of recognizing, or there are people who could have this sort of, you know, well, I don't know, his vision of this experiment and that type of language and that type of belief, you know. There's some people who are, you know, would argue like it is under grave threat right now. And I am sort of, you know, depending on what day it is, I can at the very least understand that. And I think there's an argument, you know, because I don't know. I've never lived through the demise of, you know, and I think to the extent that we have a democracy, it is highly problematic and flawed insofar as how well it functions. But in terms of, like, you know, that Canadian professor who was around saying that, you know, in 10 years, America is probably going to be an autocracy of some form. Like, I don't, it doesn't sound crazy to me. Right. Because I've never lived through this process before, and I don't know what it would look like. But I can't imagine it would look dramatically different than this. It's just who knows, you know, sometimes you just don't know how deep a pond is until you start to walk in it. And
that's exactly right. And the fact is, so there's, I think, two things here. And one of them is that when you talk about America as an experiment, okay, so when can we make a determination that we want to change the parameters of the experiment? We can't. Like, can we add seats to the Supreme Court? Can we get rid of the Senate? If we say these aspects of the experiment aren't working out, well, it turns out the people in charge aren't going to let us change them. Exactly. And then the other part of it is, in the already existing system, you know, Wisconsin is not a democracy. We have a federalist system. People are already living under undemocratic governments all across the country. So again, like, how's the experiment going? Who gets to decide when the experiment is done? Who actually gets to judge it besides Justice Breyer's children?
And he's gotten to decide a lot about what the makeup of the American experiment has been over the many decades that he's been a judge and that he's been on the Supreme Court. And there is this quality to justices and many judges as well of being so sequestered from the actual realities of everyday people that, one, the nature of having a lifetime appointment allows for that, but also, two, their perception of themselves is above the fray in that area, and academics who can see these things from their lofty ivory towers in their robes. I mean, that is part of the issue as well. And I mean, it could be solved by ending lifetime appointments and then also adding and ending judicial review in many ways.
You know, and I know you grew up, you know, raised by lawyers. I was too. And one of the things that I have found to be sort of just impossible to absorb with this generation of lawyers in particular is their sort of belief. I mean, Breyer's talking as if this experiment is just we put, you know, we put these things out there into this laboratory and then we stand back and we just observe, as if he's not actually involved in the experiment. Like, this is not an experiment where it's like, I'm going to pour these two things in there and stand back and see what happens. Like, there are 9 people in this country who have the ability to fundamentally change the relationship between our government and citizens. And they do it more or less to some degree every day. And he is sitting next to a couple of them, 6 of them, maybe you could argue 5, depending on any given day, who are just completely ignoring every sort of fantasy that he has or maintains or pretends exists in the law. This idea of that the law is above the fray and that you can be, it's religious. It's about being, it's totally a religion.
Yeah, I was totally triggered by the way he spoke like. Yes,
and it's totally like, you know, we're part of this priesthood, and it's an avocation, and the law exists distinct from human influence. And it's like, dude, look across the people next to you and tell me that's the truth. I mean, it's just absurd. And it's almost like he held on to this fiction so that he could sell his fucking book. And we are still in a tremendous amount of jeopardy. Now, I should be clear here. If the Senate were to confirm somebody tomorrow, even though Breyer's not stepping down, once that person is confirmed, this is my understanding, they are confirmed. So even if they confirm tomorrow, they won't, obviously, and I don't know, Patrick Leahy passes on because he's old, or somebody gets hit by a bus in the Democratic, whatever it is, and is appointed by a Republican, you know, their successor is appointed by a Republican governor, or their successor is not named, which is also a possibility, right? Because how do you pass in a 50-50 Senate if you only have 49 senators? You know, so there's a lot of jeopardy involved here, that this guy just was like, but I think it's going to work.
It's the grand experiment.
I think it's going to work out.
Yeah. He timed it. It's really close to the last possible minute that he could have done this with the understanding that the majority could very well be lost by the end of the year. And I mean, I don't know. I guess it's very hard to let go of these myths once you allow them to become sort of foundation of your entire worldview. But at the end of the day, you know, he's retiring while Democrats can replace him. And I don't even know how we're supposed to like square that with what he's telling us, right? How does he square it to himself?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and we should be more explicit, because he was adamant 6 to 9 months ago that you would not retire for political reasons.
No political considerations in his retirement. So
it really is.
He should have at least pretended to have, like, you know, gotten sick or something, right? Just to like, just to try to make it a little clearer.
And
Like coughing a little blood coming out of his mouth.
And that's part of the narcissism. I mean, not to hang on this too much, but the perception that one is above politics in the saintly position that one resides in, when you are in politics, you are in it. And the fiction that they hold on to, one of the many that drives me nuts, is that there is a way for these Supreme Court justices to look upon politics beneath them and then make these godlike decisions that affect everybody else because they have the ability to see what the measly-minded or meager-minded politicians who are elected by the plebeians that they cannot see, and I find that to be, you know, triggering, as you say, as I said before. I hate it.
We should say just to be fair to lawyers, that there's some of this still resides in the Senate, and I think it's almost gone from the media. But, you know, you and I remember David Broder and that this sort of supposed mentality. But the fact of the matter is that depending on where you're situated, even if you genuinely believe this stuff, if you look around what's happening in this country, you are aiding and abetting that which you say your inaction or your being above the fray is actually part of the fray. There's no escaping it.
And what the Supreme Court and the Senate have in common as institutions is that, you know, I think realists point to the results of their actions, and then the people in the institution say, like, don't do that. You are hurting the legitimacy of our institution in the eyes of the people. Don't stop. You are making us look illegitimate by pointing to the outcomes that our institutions create.
And so there we are. And Biden came out and said that he was going to appoint an African-American woman to this seat. There are a couple of, I guess, candidates that are perceived to be front runners. Ketanji Brown Jackson and Leandra Kruger seem to be the top two. Jackson is 51, Kruger is 45. Kruger is supposedly considered more moderate. I don't know what that means in this context.
I saw she went to Yale and Harvard.
I think they both are, you know, well
some
educated.
people are trying to like get the Biden administration to consider somebody not from an Ivy League law school, but good
luck with that.
Oh, how dare you suggest that someone in the esteemed institution of the Supreme Court didn't go to an Ivy League law school?
But it's going to be interesting. We've already seen Ed Whelan. He was the guy who said that Brett Kavanaugh had a doppelganger.
Right.
And
used like Zillow records and like developed this really elaborate and strange tale.
And of course, we know what Ed Whelan says because the New York Times interviewed him. Because apparently the guy who stands on the corner, just west of 42nd Street on a soapbox, wearing wearing a diaper and playing a guitar, wasn't available. And so,
hey, it's a thong.
Yeah, and so. What's interesting is to see how much of the I can't believe he's going to like make this pick based upon identity and politics we're going to see. Because I don't know if anybody's noticed, but Amy Coney Barrett, everyone knew that she would be picked. Everyone. And to be clear, she had never been a judge. She had been a judge for what, like a year and a half? Was that it?
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, it's funny, right? Because it's exactly what you say. Like the Republic, like the Federalist Society has a list of young far right Catholics that they pick from, and like now everyone has to pretend to be sort of outraged at. And Biden. I mean, it's funny when Biden just came out and said that because it's a little old fashioned, right? You could hear like Nixon or Reagan even just being like, "Oh, I got to get a woman. We're going to put a woman on there." And then I feel like it was this sort of 90s, 2000s thing where you had to be like the best possible jurist, regardless of identity, you know? But now, Biden's a throwback guy. So he's like, we're just gonna do it.
Or you could just come out and say like, I'm going to figure out who I'm going to put on and then just put her on. Like, like you don't have to, like, you just got to do it. You know, you don't need to, like, you know, nobody's owed the you know, the forewarning that you're going to do the right thing. And, you know, I mean, honestly, like, if it's hard for me to believe that there is one person out there who is the best pick for the Supreme Court. Like, I mean, give me a break.
It's very
right?
silly.
I mean, it's just absurd. It's absurd.
It's like the sword and the stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, that's part of like the fan fiction element of it too, right? Like the lofty way in which this entire process is perceived is so disconnected from the way the rest of us perceive it, especially in the post 9/11 era, and the rest of us have immense disdain for it, as the rest of them are, like, forgive me, masturbating to it. Well, you dropped the F-bomb in the first hour, so
I guess.
I felt
All right.
the flood.
I forgive you for it, Emma.
Thank you.
Sorry. I just found that so. I mean, I had problems with Ginsburg staying on as long as she did. His was in many ways more reprehensible because he just had a very recent example of why you don't do that.
Exactly.
I mean, she was a little bit overconfident. He should have had the ability to look and go like, oh, I guess that happens. And realize, like, not a good idea. So hopefully this happens quickly and we get past it. But, you know, again, it's another one of those things. And not coincidentally, Nancy Pelosi announced that she's running for re-election again, because it is so important that she's the only person who can do this. And the idea that, I mean, so much of our politics, at least in the context of the Democratic Party, are, it seems to me, trapped by this generation that will not step aside. And
they believe they're indispensable.
They believe they're indispensable, and their views are completely ossified. And I say this as someone who feels that my views on some level are ossified. But theirs are completely ossified, and it's stunning. It really is.
I mean, it's, you know, I'm approaching being a middle-aged dad, and like people 2 generations ahead of me are still running things. I mean, I don't even know what to say at this point, and it's because, like, Nancy Pelosi has an entire sort of industry of people to whom she is indispensable, because they rely on her for their employment and their connections in the party and their power in the party. And they're the only ones that these people actually talk to every day, right? Like these hangers-on and longtime aides and, you know, former staffers. Like it's an institution that tells these people, oh, you know, you're right, you can't step aside because who could possibly fill your shoes?
And it's quite clear to me. I mean, she had pledged that she was not going to stay in leadership. I can't imagine she wouldn't have retired if she was gonna if she was going to actually give up leadership. But it seems like this is just a function of Joe Crowley's not around anymore. I don't have anybody to replace me. I may need another year to usher in Hakeem Jeffries. Is basically, or decide whether it's going to be him or not, or, you know, I don't know.
I think it's that. Right. She needs more time to figure out her successor, and her daughter didn't want to run, you know, or maybe her daughter, she just felt like needed more time for her daughter to, like, get ready to run. Because I'm nearly positive that is who is going to run to replace her.
Oh my God. Honestly, like I
can't even begin to think about that, or I'll get depressed.
Let's just talk briefly before we get to your piece. Where we are in terms of the legislation. Joe Biden today, you know, you could see the turn from everybody, and word went down from high above, like, maybe we should start talking about the things that we've done on some level, because it doesn't look like we're going to be doing much more. Pramila Jayapal apparently came out, and if Pramila Jayapal knows what Joe Manchin likes and dislikes in the Build Back Better, I would imagine there's a lot of other people who do too. I don't get the sense that like
You're close.
that Manchin's like, listen, Pramila, I'm going to tell you. And
Only telling you. I only trust you with
Person.
this information.
I'm going to share you this with. But she, it sounds like, basically said like, you guys have known this for a couple of weeks. Let's get this done so that we can do something. Because this hanging in the wind thing is just ridiculous. What like, I don't know. Do you have any sense of where we go from here? Because it seems like the administration is being relentless in not having Biden do anything unilaterally at this point.
Yeah.
The whole party seems to be in complete defensive mode. They're already attempting to blame the left for their failure to even pass a moderate, the compromised version. Where are we in this as we are now 11 months out, 10 months out from midterms?
I think what is happening to some extent is that the administration is seeing their theory of politics disproven by events and simply does not know how to react. And I think in the sense that all the people involved thought that passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill would earn them a tremendous amount of goodwill from the press and the public that never materialized. And they were, I think, banking on this sense that they would get momentum from the bipartisan infrastructure bill, that COVID would disappear thanks to vaccines, and that they'd be coasting into the new year riding high. And when none of that happened, they just don't know what to say or do. And I think that's sort of where we are. I think that they're just like, oh, our original theory of politics that we could make the Senate work again turned out to be false. Our sort of backup theory that doing a big bipartisan thing would be popular didn't really mean much. And so I don't know. I think they're lost. I think they're just lost.
I can't help but think that the real fundamental failure was with Biden inviting Republicans after the passage of the first COVID relief bill, of the COVID relief bill they passed, inviting Republicans in, then inviting Sinema and Portman to develop their own, sort of dual track. And meanwhile, Chuck Schumer completely dropping the ball.
Yeah.
There were, basically we were sold this idea of Joe Biden understands the Senate. Mm-hmm. And so he's going to take care of the Joe Manchin problem or any of those problems. And that there was actually a Senate majority leader who was in charge of this. I mean, this is an abject failure. If you cannot get your 50 senators to pass a piece of legislation that the biggest obstacle to, Joe Manchin, had called for a piece of legislation that was $500 billion bigger.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he was saying, initially he was saying I want $4 trillion. They F this up, or
totally, yeah,
there's no point in having leadership. It's either one or the other. Either this is why you need good leadership, or there's no such thing as leadership, and it's just wherever the chips fall is where they fall.
Yeah.
We passed this without any sort of public attempt to bring the Republicans on board. People are going to say that we're just too much of a bully, and it's just
Yeah. I think
it's unbelievable that was what they were working. It's like,
I mean, we've talked about this before, but senators, lifelong senators especially, they see that people hate dysfunction and people say they like bipartisanship, and then they think, well, we have to pursue bipartisanship. But we're like, what people like is winning, passing things, doing things, and what they don't like is squabbling, bickering, endless negotiations. And then the Senate chooses that path every single time. But just doing stuff. People see, they're doing stuff. They don't really actually then notice or care how it got done.
It honestly is like the Titanic sinking. We've got to patch the hull. But first, we got to make sure it's the right color of blue that we paint the outside on, because we don't want to show up at back at the dock and people going like,
people don't like ugly boats.
The boat looks ugly. Oh, what happened?
People like their boats to be pretty. That's what our polling tells us.
All right. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I hope that they pass, universal pre-K. It's a big deal. Elder care. I'm not sure exactly what the provisions are. It's a big deal. Obviously, we have, desperate need for some type of climate mitigation. I don't know if that's going to be even remotely close to what is enough, but something is better than nothing at this stage. But let's talk about the other thing that's going on, because I think you're right. I think they got completely blindsided by Omicron.
Yeah.
I think they thought that the vaccine was basically going to get things done. They attempted the vaccine mandate that got reversed, but largely I think it was successful because it was instituted. It created the right pressures to get people vaccinated at that time. But there's like almost like three tiers of this, right? Like there's the full-on anti-vaxxers, the sort of like Republican right-wing COVID deniers. And then there's this sort of like libertarian strain of denial that is trying to get everybody back to normal and out of this autocratic boot on our necks that is keeping normalcy. And you wrote a great piece on this, which basically said like, there's no foot in that boot. In fact, there's no boot.
Yeah.
Walk me through this, because this, and like that last cohort of people are really libertarian in some way, because they're looking for some return to normalcy, it seems to me, because they don't want government action to support a non-normal situation, but it's also just sort of bizarre.
Yeah, and so we just finished taping interviews for a forthcoming episode of our podcast, Politics is Everything, about Boris Johnson and his scandal in the UK. And we were talking to people in England, and one guest said something that was like, as I'm sure you are also used to there, we haven't been able to gather with family for some time. And I would encourage Americans to go look at what the restrictions, the government imposed restrictions, have been in Conservative Party run England over the last several years, because that is what actual restrictions on behavior look like. For a long time, they weren't allowed to go outside after like 10 p.m. They weren't allowed to gather in groups larger than 5 or 6. And the authorities were enforcing them. Police were stopping cars to check where you were traveling and things like that. And to go back to what I wrote about, I'd sort of just described, first of all, my week, basically, in which my kid had gone to pre-K. We had a birthday party in the park. My mother visited for his birthday last week. And all of this happened in the background of thousands and thousands of Americans dying every day from COVID-19. And my essential point was that there aren't restrictions on behavior. I can go to I could go to a bar right now. I could go to a restaurant right now. And this is in New York, which had some of the stricter lockdown rules earlier in the pandemic. And sort of what people are debating and what they're complaining about is school closures to a large extent. But schools are closing mostly when people get sick. People get sick and they can't go to work, and then schools close. And I don't mean to diminish how difficult school closures are, because I know they have been impossible for a lot of parents to manage, especially working class parents. But working class and often Black parents are the ones who have been most in favor, of COVID mitigation and remote learning and virtual learning. Like, polls have consistently shown that. So I was sort of trying to sort of get around the more tedious part of that debate, but also just to sort of emphasize to Americans that, like, the government is not currently telling you can't do things, especially like once you get the vaccine.
And to the extent that the mandate was the so-called vaccine mandate that the Biden administration pushed was supposedly, I mean, it wasn't really a vaccine mandate. It was a testing mandate, which you could opt out of. I mean, my experience has been exactly like yours. To the extent that I see, like, restaurants having problems or this and that, it is not because the government has in any way inhibited people from going to the restaurant. It's that concern about COVID has, and it's like there's this cohort of people out there. Matt just sent me Nate Silver's tweet. Let's put it up blind because I'm sure it's going to be indicative of this. I mean, look, I think
open table restaurant.
Oh yeah, this is it. Yeah. In Miami, they were up 14% compared with January of 2019, but other places they were down dramatically. And I guess the argument is that somehow there's more restrictions there. No, I think what it is that there are people in those areas, in those blue areas, who are taking it more seriously. I would also bet on some level, I mean, it has to do with, like, in Manhattan, for instance, I'm looking at that down 64%. It's because you had really wealthy people going to their places in the East Hamptons or going to Colorado.
Palm Beach. Yeah.
Maybe that's why they're up in Florida, is because they want to be outside more. I would also imagine there's more outside dining in Miami.
It would be nicer to be outdoor dining in Miami right now than it would here.
Absolutely. I mean, to think that that's not a part of this equation, it is much, much safer to eat outside than it is inside. And the other thing is that I find astonishing about this is that, as a parent, that the idea that you could, in some way, even if statistically the odds are low, and I'm not saying that they necessarily are, frankly, particularly with Omicron, of your kid getting seriously ill from anything that you did or didn't do, the stakes are so much higher, even if the statistics aren't there. And so it inhibits your behavior. Yeah. And that is a perfectly rational, and I would think on some level, an attribute that we want from parents. Be somewhat overly protective of your kids in light of, not knowing what long COVID is, how it's going to implicate kids years down the road. I mean, I can see that. I mean, I can see why people would, I wouldn't necessarily have been the first person in line with my 8-year-old to get vaccinated. After a couple of million people get vaccinated, all right, I feel a little more comfortable about it. But I mean, so I can understand, like that, some measure of concern to do anything with your kid. I mean,
my kid just turned 5, right? So he only just became vaccine eligible. And there are things that I think we have been not as cautious as some people, but we've been reasonably cautious. But there are things we weren't doing until we could get the vaccine for him. And I have to imagine, like, that's not a sign. When other people are doing that, it's not irrational, and it's not because they are in love with lockdown, right? And that's sort of the language that I find most off-putting, because I don't know anyone for whom that's true. I know people who are being cautious according to their own calculations of their safety based on their best understanding of public health. And we need better public health communication, certainly, in addition to all sorts of other kinds of support. But, I'm not doing the sort of up until he's fully immune, like, we're not doing the sort of travel we would have been doing in a normal year. And, like, that's just because of the reality of the world. Also, when we took him to get his shot, he was very, very worried about getting vaccinated. And he said, instead of getting the vaccine, can I just get a shot? And we said, yes, you can. If you want to, you can just get a shot.
No, he's gonna hold that against you when he finds out. I mean, my son was, and it certainly wasn't coming from us. He was very relieved to get the vaccine. And so I don't know. I agree with you. Like the idea of like somebody's in love with the lockdown is just a bizarre construct. And it's almost as if, I mean, the analogy I would make is this, is that like, if in the course of doing everything I can to protect my children within what I deem to be reasonable, and everybody has their own, like you say, everybody has their own sort of like comfort zone with that. And I as a matter of policy, I think people should do that. I might, be sitting and talking on the phone with somebody and say like, I can't believe they're doing this or that. But as a matter of in terms of the public, but we do what's within reason, and then maybe we do stuff that we're willing to accept that risk. And that's what makes us feel comfortable. It's as if these people want to do stuff and want to not have to account for the deaths or whatever's happening,
or feel like a bad parent because
but they're not parents,
right?
Like that's the thing. It's like the people who are espousing this generally are not parents. It's as if they have this like, I want to be able to say this stuff and not have it have myself feel guilty as I see thousands of people a day dying. It's just
and that's why the unmask our children thing is so much of that is projection too, right?
Totally.
It's because they want to go to bars, they want to do whatever they want to do, and they don't want to feel like they want to be protected from any guilt that happens from that. And that is
yeah. I think it's totally normal to just have a very powerful feeling of I want everything to go back to the way it was. I often feel that way. I would like everything to just go back to the way it was. And I think what these people we're talking about have done is they've turned that feeling and they've taken that feeling and they turned it into someone else's fault. They've said everyone else has decided not to allow things to be the way they were. And that's just not really the fact.
But this is also it seems to me, very much related to the whole cancel culture argument, which is why I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of these people are the same people who are talking about this stuff, because it is a resent that they are not getting permission to have the world to perceive the world as if they need permission from everybody else, because they want to be released from any type of accountability for their perspective. And so they're projecting onto others that you're inhibiting my feeling of freedom. And my freedom is not just freedom in terms of like what I can do or what I can say, but freedom from any type of doubt creeping in. And for years, my argument about what Rush Limbaugh did more than anything else for the conservative mind was to say, and he would explicitly say this at different stages in his career, do not doubt yourself. Do not doubt yourself. It was all about any creeping doubt that would come in is to be expelled. And that's what these people are arguing for. Do not make me feel any doubt about this.
And that's, It's a powerful and attractive thing. And I think like we've seen its success on the right and the center right. Like it's liberatory.
And it's very much libertarian on some level too, because if the other option is, hey, we need to accept that the virus exists, and how do we respond to this in such a way that is going to minimize immiseration for people? Government needs to spend a tremendous amount of money to allow people to stay at home, to pay for mechanisms in which to take care of kids, to increase, you're
worried about the restaurants? Give them aid.
Exactly.
You're worried about the restaurants? Give them aid, Nate Silver.
And you're worried about children's ability to socialize and whatnot. Put high powered ventilators into, or I should say, what do you call it? The ventilation into schools. Like fit the schools to make them even more safe. Yeah. If you're that worried about it, there should be filters in every classroom. really good filters, multiple filters. You should be able to, spend the money. It would be an incredibly expensive project, but apparently,
this is the sad thing is that we sent a bunch of money out to do that, but with no mechanism to say this is how the money should be spent, and no ability to follow up and say, here's where that school money should have gone. And so a lot of times it just disappeared into other stuff because we have a barely functional government.
Yeah. Well, Alex Pareene, glad we figured all that out.
Same as always.
Yes, always a pleasure. So wait, is this episode that you did on Boris Johnson? It also reminds me too. I just want to say this because this also stuck in my craw. There are some leftists out there that I respect who are against the vaccine mandates. Again, we have no vaccine mandates in this country except for healthcare workers. Mm-hmm. There's this clip going around of Jeremy Corbyn where ostensibly he's against vaccine mandates. And if you listen to the clip carefully, you will see that his problem with vaccine mandates was basically twofold. One, he didn't see it as practical because the NHS was going to lose a significant portion of its healthcare workers. That was not an issue in this country.
Yeah.
It was almost like a Y2K type of situation. This apocalypse that we thought was going to happen in terms of vaccinations and they would be understaffed. That's not what's causing a strain in our hospitals. It's the fact that you had people, inhibiting any type of COVID protective measures to protect the hospitals. A and B.
And we have a for-profit healthcare system that makes sure that there's very, very little margin for error.
Slack.
Yeah.
No slack. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was that Corbyn had mentioned was it's better to convince people than force people. And the fact of the matter is we can measure that. And in this country, when the administration said we're going to impose either a test mandate with an exemption for vaccines, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. It added, it gave us a bump in vaccinations.
Well, and all this anti-mandate stuff is coming at a time where the West is trying to convince China to drop their zero COVID rules, which kept their rates so low throughout this entire thing that they've actually had a more voluntary vax system than we have. But we're trying to get them to drop that now because we need them to get back in the factories and making stuff for the supply chain.
Exactly.
So that's why there's libertarians they likes to act like we're the anti-authoritarian one, but really you're just saying what the West is saying to China.
Exactly. So wait. So when?
Our Boris episode will be up next week. You'll be able to see it.
Okay, and folks can check that out. The politics of everything. Alex Pareene, thanks so much for your time. Always a pleasure.
Of course. See you later.
Thanks, Alex. Bye.
All right, folks. We're gonna head into the fun half. Early fun half this week. In the fun half, we got a lot of clips. We're gonna take your phone calls because we got in there quick.
Fun.
We're going to take your IMs. We're going to debate another person who believes that the squad is bringing you fascism.
I loathe to give you a compliment, but you're consistently so on point with that thing about Limbaugh and the doubt.
It's just like I listen to him and, well, I don't know why you're loath to give me a compliment, but I know I listened to him. I listened to him for many, many, many years, and I was always struck. He went through a period of time, and I can't remember when it was. Maybe it was like in the mid '90s to the mid aughts, but it really was in the '90s where his show was. It wasn't quite how to, but there was a quality of self-help there, where a lot of time was dedicated towards that notion of, don't doubt yourself. Do not doubt yourself, which is, good in some contexts, but really problematic in others. And what he was basically saying was shut out all information, not just that I'm giving you, but any information that makes you doubt whether your positions are, whether you and people like you own the truth. Mm-hmm. And that was very, very important.
It's why cults try to remove people from their families and support systems.
And within the concern, I mean, look at how many times have we talked about, the dynamic of someone's conservative on certain positions until it happens to their family.
Yeah.
And that's what that dynamic is about. Because you can't shut it out when your kid all of a sudden wants to get, wants to live a normal life and get married. Even though they're gay, it's much harder for you as a parent to sort of like ignore that. Oh, wait a second. Maybe it's possible that these things exist, outside of me. Or, we see it with the vaccinations. I mean, we see it over and over again. And there's plenty of examples. But, and before we go, ladies and gentlemen, this is, I have a special announcement, special shofar. Dorsey, who is actually the first producer this show ever had.
Wow.
There was really, at its beginning, two people who made the show possible. Kyle, when he came to me and said, like, I will construct your tech. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, maybe it's possible to do this. I ran into Dorsey on the street, and he had we knew each other from Air America, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I may do this show." And he's like, "I'll help you." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I mean, I could barely pay you anything. Like, there's not going to be any revenue." And he's like, "I'll help you." And I was like, oh, "Okay." And so, like, I think for the first, I don't know how many months it was, 4 or 5 months. And then he got a real job at BuzzFeed, but he launched the show. And then he came back when we were, years later. Well, Dorsey just had just scored a coup. And this is Dorsey and Maddie are now officially engaged.
Oh. Yeah. Congrats to him.
Congratulations, well, to Dorsey and to Maddie.
And to Maddie.
I mean, probably more to Dorsey.
Right.
But to both of them equally. I don't want to make a judgment on that. I'm not trying to imply.
I mean, you did, but that's okay.
I guess I did. But congratulations, you guys. Very, very happy for you. All right. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, the AM Quickie. I just checked the numbers. It has grown by like 20% in the past 3 or 4 months. People are really loving it. You get top news stories every day by Jack or Corey. They switch off, and we don't sell your email addresses. You're not going to get crypto pitches or gold pitches or even CBD pitches. We're going to occasionally we put an ad in the newsletter itself, but you're not going to get emails from anybody else but us, and you're always going to get some content that you want to read. So check it out, amquickie.com. Sign up. It's free. We may go to some model because at one point we're going to have to make some money off it. But that's always the last thing I figure out.
Yeah.
But it's free, and it's a great read every day. amquickie.com. Check it out. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
For patrons of Left Reckoning this weekend, we have Kevin Bird at the Bird Maniac on Twitter. He's a actual scientist, a radical scientist, but he publishes on he's a PhD student in plant genome biology, talking about this new book on biological determinism, genetic determinism that's come out, and has usual types trying to say, we need to think really long and hard about what genetics mean for social justice, and a lot of the wokes are overlooking it because of political correctness. It turns out that, again, not really the case. And so we dive deep into that, and also get into Stephen Jay Gould and the radical scientist who met this sort of the race science, race IQ science challenge head on in the 70s and 80s. So it was a really good interview. So all you science nerds, patreon.com/leftreckoning.
Gould was so great. He was really the only scientist as a kid that I would read, because I was like, he was so accessible.
He's great leftist, and I didn't know. I
don't think I knew that when I would read him.
Right, I knew Gould was cool. I didn't know the degree of which he was like an ideological leftist, and I didn't know there was a whole sort of milieu of folks like that.
I had no idea
that were against nuclear proliferation and stuff like that. So really
I had no
inspiring.
idea. I just read him because I felt like he's a scientist, but I can understand what he's talking about.
He's a Hall of Famer, yeah.
646-257-3920. See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1 half. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up. Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Over the what do you call that? Intermission. Mm-hmm. I'm having trouble accessing words today. Over the intermission, the commercial break without commercials. I was trying to remind myself to ask you folks if you have any suggestions about Disney for the kids' February break. We're going to go down to Disney. My guess was that Omicron was going to be receding. My hope is that it's going to continue to recede. We're going to basically be outside most of the time. And all the restaurants, apparently, at all the parks are already reserved, booked. But that's okay. I'm trying to decide whether or not we go to Epcot Center on the 4th day or we go to like a water park. That's also in contention.
We've given him this suggestion. Both Matt and I say water park, but he doesn't trust us.
If anybody has any tips on Disney, email us at majorityreporters@gmail.com.
I remember a lot of
Is that wrong? Is that inappropriate for me to do?
little lizards at the water park. That kind of blew my mind. Climbing all over. Like
did
those
you
little
do that
tiny
big
ones.
slide at Typhoon
Saul
Lagoon?
would love that.
Yeah,
Saul
I did.
Loves the animals.
There's two of them, right? There's Typhoon Lagoon, and then there's like a
beach one. I'm forgetting.
Blizzard Beach.
Blizzard Beach. Yeah.
Yeah, those two are both.
Oh man,
Oh,
we
man.
should revisit this. All right, calling from a 707 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey y'all, this is Mike. I'm calling from California. First, I just wanted to say that Jackson Hinkle was buying likes on Twitter. You can see all the accounts liking his post have 0 followers. Or at least most of them do.
You know what? We saw that. Maybe we should we show these?
Well, we can show it after.
All right, we'll show it after your call. What else did you have on your mind?
Oh, I was just hoping you guys could cover more progressive candidates running for office. There's actually, I'm sure you guys know this, but March 1st, the Texas primaries. And,
oh, wow. Yeah,
it's coming up fast.
Yeah, I think, at different times we've sort of struggled with this on some level because there's when I was on the radio, it made a lot more sense to me to do that because it was a much wider audience. In this instance, maybe what we need to do is just dedicate a show and have half a dozen candidates on. So maybe that's what we need to do. I think we're going to have Nina Turner on next week. That's obviously a big race, but it might be helpful to do that. If folks have suggestions for candidates, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com and just put candidate in the subject line. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but there's a Twitter account called Leftist for Office, and they actually have a spreadsheet with every single progressive running in 2022. Some on the state level, some federal level, but mostly federal level.
Leftist for number 4 office?
Let me check real quick. Yes, the number 4.
Leftist for office?
Yes.
I'm not seeing it, but maybe they blocked me.
Send us a link at majorityreporters@gmail.com.
I don't think so. Yeah, they're all red. Their profile picture. It's just Leftist for office. but yeah, they do a lot of good work
Leftists with
there.
a plural. Plural, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Found it. Thank you.
Awesome. Right on. And then I don't know if you can pass this along to Jank and Anna, but whenever they cover progressive candidates, they have a separate channel for it that doesn't get nearly the amount of views as their main channel. So that channel with 5 million subscribers, and they have the conversation. It only has 160,000, and they don't get nearly as much exposure on that channel as the main one.
Huh. I have not talked to either one of those folks in probably a couple of years, but they've.
Who?
And
oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at Leftist for office. I didn't hear you. I apologize.
But yes, if I have occasion to talk to him, I will tell him.
What was the thing I need to tell?
Put the candidates on the main channel.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if they'll listen, but I appreciate the suggestion.
It might be separate channels to get more ad money or something like that.
I think it's also just trying to.
It's tough to get people excited about somebody who's running in a primary in a district that is thousands of miles away from them, unless the candidate has a national profile. It's just tough to get people excited about it. That's the primary reason why I don't do it as much as I used to do when I was on radio. That's it.
I will say, I mean, someone who does a really good job at TYT of both covering the news and integrating leftist candidate interviews on his show is John. So watch the Damage Report if you want a little bit more of that, because he does try to highlight it on his channel as well.
All right, appreciate the call.
Right on.
Thanks, man.
Guys.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
On that note, let me just shout out Chris Liel who's running for Texas House 114, who was on the show earlier, has secured endorsements from the AFT, the AFL-CIO, and Our Revolution. So,
wow, that's good.
For Chris.
Now, that's the other thing. If you have a buddy who works on the show, that's also going to help. But he just called in. Yeah. And listen, if you're a candidate and you're listening out there, or you work for a candidate, by all means, call in. And if you send us you tweet at Matt or, the Majority FM Twitter and say, we're on the line. I'm calling from area code blank, blank, blank. We'll pick up. I mean,
I've done that a couple times.
By all means. By all means. Let's go through a couple of these clips here. Oh, let me do a couple of IMs. But the dream ain't mine. But the dream ain't mine. Sam, you misshapen testicle. You look like you smell like something fermented that shouldn't have been fermented. I really feel poor Emma having to work with you every day. Hang in there, Emma. Sam turns 91 this year, and douchiness is considered a comorbidity, so, well, you know. Anyway, I love the show. Keep up the great work. Oh, and P.S., why the hell have you never had AOC on? Ellen Avi, Sam, I got to ask you, what the hell is the deal with the pre-show break music? Why does it randomly fade out just to come back at full volume? Who's responsible for this and why? P.S. Left is best. Or, Beft is last. What is the music at the break?
It's a burn from Beat Cops.
Oh, yeah.
And it fades out.
That was actually
it's on
not from Beat Cops. That was from Pilot Season, a show I did 20 years ago. And it's, I paid for the music. So and Dave Derby do like a porno theme. And so it did dips and then it comes back up. That's it. Left-handed stranger, Emma. You don't put those static napkins in the dryer when you wash your clothes, do you?
Static napkins? You mean dryer sheets?
Anti-static dryer sheets are what they're generally called.
Yes, I use dryer sheets.
Oh, Sunset Lake, Charlie Beta Delta. Fierce day. Coming home from school to go into your basement and listen to sports talk radio. I think Matt Leck and I might have been the same person in high school. The experiment will have exactly one trial, and we will make no observations or adjustments. People want to go to places maskless and not have the reality check of seeing a person with a mask and reminding them of their own irresponsibility. I mean, I think that's what it is.
Yeah. I also think we misunderstand what was exciting about like the term experiment back at the like founding of the country and maybe like the Civil War, which is that it's new. Like an experiment that has been going on for centuries is a lot less fun than like, oh, we just got rid of feudalism and now we need to learn how to do republicanism.
Right.
And an experiment at one point is supposed to end. Gotta be honest.
And what standards are you judging it by?
Right. You're like an experiment. If you're following the scientific method, you have to come to a conclusion at one point, Breyer.
It's more like watch a train crash.
I think we might have come to a conclusion.
Crinkled Hinkle. Sam, just writing to say that although I pay monthly for this subscription, I'm not a fan and only pay to send mean comments. Left is best. Kid Tested Politburo. My local radio station is already starting the only considering black women for the Supreme Court is racist talking point. Might have to finally call in and see how quickly I devolve into insulting them.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro was saying that yesterday.
Bing bong. Sam, did you just say hardball politics, aka force the vote? I learned in my physics class that leverage was a synonym for force the vote. So when you need to lift something heavy, you plank and force the vote of the heavy thing with the plank. Science. That was the most frustrating thing about the whole thing.
That's what they always do. They think force the vote is synonymous with any kind of use of leverage, and they argue backwards from there.
Force the vote's a new made-up thing. It's just like...
But like, it's also like for the goal of, again, like a parliamentary thing where you get a vote for...
It's the force the part, and then the vote is what you're after. Force is is the leverage that you're using.
Right. Leverage the vote.
Hey, Sam, just wanted to let you know that your mic on Zoom always seems to favor your guest and was ducking your audio the entire time during your debate with that Jimmy Dore fan. Your mic got caught anytime he interrupted, and you were never able to interrupt him when he was talking, so he was able to evade topics he didn't want to talk about and filibuster. Luckily, he was an effing moron, so it didn't matter much, but there's been a similar problem. We just had that conversation in the office, and we've got to fix that. We got to figure out, we got to make the switch. True North politics. Theo Faluri's lie on Laura Ingram's show that there are 50,000 truckers in the convoy is being repeated everywhere. Kingston local police department in Ontario said this morning there were 17 full tractor trailers, 104 trucks without trailers, 424 passenger vehicles, and 6 RVs. This is going to be a case study in propaganda. Sam Cedars mise en scène. The other day, an IMer messaged questioning the accuracy of rapid tests for Omicron. My infant and toddler both have COVID. They both tested negative on the rapid test, but positive on the PCR test that were taken at the same time in the doctor's office. This doesn't prove rapid test inaccuracy, but it's something to keep in mind. Yeah, we've said this multiple times here, and this is the reality. The PCR test will tell you the presence of the virus, which is far more sensitive than the antigen test, which will tell you that you are contagious. Now, there's not 100% accuracy for either, but that's the difference. That's the value of taking a rapid test before you go into the office or a New Year's party or whatever it is, because you can tell whether you're infectious at that moment. It may take 2 days for the infection to grow in you. It may take 2 or 3 days after exposure for you to become infectious. You can have COVID. You can test positive on a PCR test 7, 8, 10 days after having COVID and not be contagious. You can test positive on a PCR test and not be contagious. The safest thing to do is to avoid other people at that point, because you don't know when you're going to be contagious, or if you know. But that's the difference. That is the difference. PCR test, and again, not 100%, but it will tell you whether you are contagious.
And if you find out you're contagious, maybe don't go back to the Upper East Side restaurant that you were dining at before. Yeah.
Clown Shoe Mike, typical Cedar. What does a blue slip have to do with the squad getting concessions on House votes from the Senate? Stop interrupting me as I love goalposts. As I move goalposts. Oh, sorry. Penny from New Mexico. We need enough new Democratic senators added in 2022 in case Manchin or Sinema defect to Republicans once a bigger Senate majority deprives them of the attention and power they crave. I use Sunset Lake Salve on my dog who has genetic skin condition that keep his hair from growing. Results have been miraculous. Our vet is blown away. Oh, wow.
That's great.
Those anti-static dryer sheets are often toxic for skin and environment. There are alternatives.
Oh.
Like felt balls, I think.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And my boyfriend hates the smell of them too, so I should just invest in the balls.
Well, your
Jesus.
freedom is being restricted. So if that's what you want to do. All right, let's take a quick call and then we'll get some clips. Call him from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, how are you?
Good. I just wanted to debate you.
Okay.
I have a new YouTube channel, and if you don't mind, I'm going to clip this. The video is going to be called Why is Sam Cedar Obsessed with Me?
Mm-hmm.
Why is Sam Cedar obsessed with you? You called into the show.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's one way to look at it, I guess. But you have a couple of kids, I think, right?
Yeah.
And you would say that you support your kids?
I mean, I financially support them, and I try and be supportive of their endeavors, if that's what you mean.
I mean, that's weird, because how many of the days they've been alive, how many days would you say they've disappointed you?
I don't know. Probably. I mean, there are days that they disappoint me. I don't keep a ongoing record of it, but yes, there are days.
Well, like how many? But put a number on it. A specific number.
I don't know. 15% of the days. I mean, I don't know how many days they've been alive, but let's say 15% of the days.
Okay, so roughly like at least 1,000 days each, let's say.
Yeah, I would say probably, yeah.
We're making stuff up. Okay, so 1,000 days of your life each, and since there's some overlap, let's just say it's going to be 1,748 days total, right? Because some days they're both disappointing you.
Right.
But there have been days where only one has disappointed you. And despite that, you continue to just support them instead of like taking a stand.
Yeah,
Well,
why do you refuse
once in
to
your life.
criticize?
Well, I take a
your
stand.
kids?
I mean, I tell them,
no, stop. Hold on. Stop. I let you talk for like a really long time, and now it's my turn. That's how this works. So I've been listening to this show for a long time, and I've never once heard you call out Mila.
My daughter, I feel like I have. I feel like I have a couple of times.
About this clothing stuff.
Yeah.
No, you just keep supporting her, and then Saul, like total free pass.
I don't think that's 100% true, but okay.
Well, I mean, why won't you criticize your kids if we've already established it's been nearly 2,000 days of your life that they've let you down in some form? It seems like you would bring that up, and for some reason you refuse to.
Well, first off, I have brought it up. I thought we agreed it was closer to 1,700 days.
Where? When? Sorry, when? Stop. Hold on. When?
What
show?
I don't know. I've done a lot of shows.
Exactly.
I don't remember.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. And I imagine on your channel now you're going to talk about how you've eviscerated me. Is that right?
That's getting clipped.
He's want to know.
Why is Sam Seder obsessed with me? That's part one of the video. Part two, Sam Seder destroyed on his own show.
Yeah.
On his own show, all caps.
We need everybody tweeting about it.
Okay. Well, can I also?
So, anyways, you continue to refuse to call out your own kids, and for some reason, you support them. It just seems like you're kind of a sellout.
Well, I will say this: I've encouraged primaries against my kids. So.
Yeah, that's good. It's a step in the right direction, at least.
All right.
Have you thought about bringing in? You could bring in. For example, you've never even brought up like maybe bringing in some foster kids to at least bring competition to the household.
Here's the problem: is that my kids are the vanguard of fascism. If fascism comes to this country, it is going to be via my kids. That's the big issue. So,
well,
Ronald Reagan, appreciate the call and good luck with the videos. I hope the channel does well.
I hope that we platform some People's Party foster kids on this show in the future.
All right, let's do a couple of clips, and then we will get to. There's Jason Hinkle has a lot of apparently fans who are willing to either use a script that he puts out or just a coincidence that they're all on the exact same page. Not even the same page, on the exact same page. But we'll talk about that. Also, the thing that really also pissed me off was the supposed threat that I think he made up to his parents, which is messed up both from our perspective and I would imagine from the parents' perspective. And whenever he sent a threat to his own parents. Oh, my God. All right. Well, we'll get to that in a bit. I don't know which one we should start with here. Should we? Huh? Yeah, no kidding. I mean, let's just start with number 4 and work our way from there. This is. At one point, I can't remember exactly when it was on the show that I know we've talked about this at least multiple times. There was early in the administration a call for Joe Biden to unilaterally relieve student debt. Now, as you know, the White House believes correctly that it has the ability to place a moratorium on the repayment of student debt through the Department of Education. And they have done so. And I believe this moratorium exists at least till March at this point. And they may punt again. That same authority, it has been argued, it's May, sorry, would also allow the administration, and they have done this in specific cases, I mean, tens of thousands of cases of people, but in specific circumstances, that they could basically just relieve the people holding the debt of that debt burden. We know that this has been a huge drag on the economy. It has been a huge drag on people's ability to move into certain professions. I've done multiple interviews with different people who show that this is not in any way a regressive policy, that it would help not just doctors and lawyers, but in fact would help people across the economic spectrum and would be helpful to society at large. There was a request of the Biden administration. Their response was, we're going to have our lawyers take a look at it and generate a letter to tell us whether we have the authority to do this. This letter has taken an extraordinarily long period of time. I think we talked about this with Ilhan Omar the first time she came on.
First time, right.
Yeah, and
still caught in the printing press.
And
Those
it took a long time to generate this letter, apparently. And they wouldn't release it. Well, Jen Psaki is finally talking about this memo regarding President Biden's executive authority. Check this out.
A number of lawmakers sent a letter to the White House today, including Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren, asking the White House to release the memo that the Education Department put together looking at the president's legal authority to cancel student loan debt. I wonder, do you have a response to that, and why hasn't this memo been released?
Well, let me first say no one has paid or been required to pay a single dime of federal student loans since the president took office over a year ago. And I'll also add that our country is seeing one of the strongest economic recoveries in history, and the pause announced in December gives some breathing room for several more months to borrowers who are still coping with the pandemic. The Education Department will continue working to ensure a smooth transition to repayment. I would reiterate also that the president supports Congress, members of who sent the letter and others, sending him a bill that would provide $10,000 in debt relief.
Pause it for 1 second. I want to make something absolutely clear, that on the presidential trail, Joe Biden not only called for $10,000 debt relief for every single person who holds student loans, but he also promised that any family or anybody, I think it was under the making less than $135,000 annually, I think he did this in New Hampshire, would have their student loans wiped out. So it wasn't just $10,000 per person. It was also people under a certain income threshold would have no student debt.
Yeah, and when she says that that was sent to Congress, right? That's what is what she said right there.
Or they want Congress to send them a bill with 10,000.
Or that they want, sorry,
Right.
the opposite. I mean, that she knows that even if a bill is sent to, or even if a bill is proposed, that it will never, ever, 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 ever pass the filibuster.
Well,
ever.
you know what they need is they need the Department of Education to write up a memo as to his legal authority. In fact, that was the original question. Continue.
Who sent the letter and others, sending him a bill that would provide $10,000 in debt relief, and he continues to look into what debt relief actions can be taken administratively. I'd also note that in terms of loans that have been forgiven since the president took office, beyond the pause on repayment, a total of $15 billion benefiting more than 675,000 student loan borrowers been part of the forgiveness. Borrower defense to repayment, $1.5 billion. Total and permanent disability repayments, loans forgiveness, I should say, $7.8 billion. ITT tech students, $1.3 billion. And public service loan forgiveness, $5 billion. So we have been doing a broad range of forgiveness and also have had this pause in place, meaning that no one who has student loans has been required to pay since the president took office.
What does the White House plan to release the memo? Like, does the White House plan to tell the public whether it thinks it has the authority to cancel $10,000?
Well, as I said, again, we're still looking at administrative options, but Congress can also send the president a bill that would provide $10,000 in debt relief, and he'd be happy to sign that bill.
They can't do that.
On Friday to Pittsburgh. Can you talk a
Okay, they know, she knows that a bill cannot be sent to her. It will never pass the filibuster. It will not get 50 Democrats on board, regardless, let alone the 10 Republicans that would be necessary to pass a 60 vote threshold. And they're just like stalling. They're just stalling on this. And
Of
I can't
course.
understand.
How long does it take you to prepare a memo?
Do we have that memo, the redacted version?
Oh yeah, they put out they have actually put the memo out, but they've redacted part of it because of national security.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Honestly.
So this is the version that came out like last fall when like this debt collective got. And just scroll through these pages.
Oh, wait a second. Wait. We should be clear. This is not a typo.
Yeah.
This is not the classic. We haven't the technology to show you what a.
This is not a parody.
This is not error loading the PDF. This is the memo.
Well, at least they use pink. I mean, the blackout of the text would be totally bad for our eyes.
No,
they should have used a rainbow flag. Honestly.
No, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
This they put out the memo April 5th of last year, and didn't want to actually outline the authority, but did want to promote breast cancer awareness.
You're right.
So,
oh.
There you go.
Did you notice how she said a smooth transition to repayment? What the does that mean? What the hell
That's
is
their priority?
A smooth transition to repayment? All that means is you're gonna start paying again soon. Appreciate the loan shark who behind the podium there. Thank you.
That's who these people are.
Well, I mean, right, but they get more esteem. It's like gamblers versus Wall Street traders. They're fundamentally doing the exact same thing.
Wayne Kerr says forgiving student debt without other reforms seems like a silly move. It may lead to trapping another generation in the same predicament. I agree. We need other reforms. They're not mutually exclusive, and maybe forgiving the debt will push, help push those other reforms. We need a free college option in every state.
And it is not expensive. When it was initially talked about on the campaign trail, Bernie Sanders' proposal, I think, was one of the more expensive options. It's something like $60 billion a year, which was equivalent to at the time this was being talked about, the proposed increase in one element of the military budget, not or the executive authority part of the military budget that Trump wanted. That's a marginal small.
I don't think it's 60 billion. I don't think it's on an annual basis. No, I think it's less than that. I think it's.
I was using the top line number that one of the Bernie Sanders. There are a variety of proposals. I think 60 billion was one of the more expensive ones.
Nevertheless, we've done it in this country in the past, and we could easily do it again. One option per year. I mean, one option per state that you would not. And what it would do also is it would drive down the cost of other colleges, private colleges, just simply because they would have to compete on some level. Wouldn't drive it down dramatically, but it would drive it down somewhat, because the increase in the cost of college education came from the austerity that we saw on the state colleges, where the cost of these colleges were put on to the to students, and as the cost of these state colleges went up, freed up other private colleges to raise their tuition, and then we needed more student loans, and there you go. This is pretty amazing in terms of the vaccine. The Florida Senate Minority Leader, Lauren Book, was with the Florida Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo. And Ladapo is a DeSantis crony, isn't he? And Book asked the Surgeon General a yes or no question: whether the available vaccines work against COVID-19, because what DeSantis is trying to do, and what they're trying to do in Florida, is to make it seem like the FDA has pulled the monoclonal antibodies. There's been 3 treatments that they've been using. They, meaning the medical establishment in this country, to treat COVID. Until Omicron came, all three were effective. Omicron was not able to be treated with two of these monoclonal antibody regimes, so they pulled them. And DeSantis has made this as if it's some type of conspiracy to push people into the vaccines, because I guess it makes it easier for the big pharma to do accounting if all their revenue just comes from the vaccine as opposed to the vaccine and the monoclonal antibodies. I'm not quite sure on step 2 is a lot trickier when you get to these
vaccine that's already paid for by the government because the government ordered them so they'd be free for everybody, as opposed to the very expensive monoclonal antibody procedure that they would be getting. It's just so,
Step 2 is always tricky in these conspiracy theories, but here is the Florida Senate Minority Leader questioning Joseph Ladapo.
I believe that vaccines in fighting against a pandemic like COVID-19 are effective.
You recognize?
Thank you for your question, Senator. So, again, I would say that the question is a scientific one, and it's one that is answered with data. So the question is informed by data on specific outcomes and specific therapies. So that's the scientific question.
Mr. Chair, just a couple more follow-ups. Just a yes or no. Do vaccines work in fighting against COVID-19? Yes or no?
You recognize?
Senator, I as a scientist, I am compelled to answer the scientific question, and I'd be happy to answer any specific scientific question that you have related to vaccines and COVID-19.
Scientifically, do the vaccines work against preventing COVID-19? Yes or no?
Recognized.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Senator. So, yes or no questions are not that easy to find in science. So I understand. I think I have better clarity about your question at this point. So what I would say is that the most commonly used vaccines in the United States, which would be the Pfizer product and the product that was developed by Moderna, have been shown to have relatively high effectiveness for the prevention of hospitalization.
There we go.
Ah, there you go.
Only took 2 minutes.
But it's a scientific question. If I don't have my lab coat, I can't do it.
I mean, honestly, that is like the fifth grader version of the I didn't read the book, but let me see if I can fill up the paragraph with the question. So the question is, in Huckleberry Finn, isn't that the one that everybody, or it's Tom Sawyer? Did Tom convince people to paint the fence white? Really, you have to ask, what does convince mean in this context? And white, it's unclear.
Was it an eggshell?
Because you could look at illustrations, but what is white except for an absence of other colors where light reflects upon it? So the question that is being asked is one as to what the color of the paint was.
This is the same thing Jordan Peterson was doing on Rogan when he says, like, we can't really know what climate is.
Yeah.
Like, we need to, I mean, there'd be baffling amount of
climate is everything.
Variables. Yeah.
We have no idea.
We don't have the amount of letters for the amount of variables we need to talk about with climate, so we can't know anything about anything. So let's just throw our hands up.
What does it mean for a vaccine to be effective? If everything is effective, then nothing's effective.
I didn't realize how much he sounded like a Muppet until this moment.
Yes,
Sam.
he does. Very Muppet-like.
The question is a scientific one.
I'm sorry, I've got some salami stuck
Hey, here's
in
a
my
scientific.
throat.
Here's a question for science.
I'm eating a lot of meat.
Question for science. Do cigarettes cause lung cancer?
Well, Matt, the question is a scientific one and one that is answered with data.
One would need to see the data, but what does that
scientific
even
question.
mean? Really?
Does the Earth rotate around, travel around the sun?
Okay,
Yes or no?
from whose perspective?
These yes or no questions are
No, but
actually
from whose perspective? See, if we don't really know who's asking the question, they can't really answer.
Okay, I have a better sense of what you were asking now. Yes, I guess tobacco does cause cancer.
Okay, the sun, right.
Oh, why didn't you just say that?
Yeah, I don't, you, see, the problem was in the way that you asked the question.
We have another Jordan Peterson clip if you want.
Oh, we do?
Beautiful.
There's another bit of him on Joe Rogan. He was on there for 4 hours, so I mean, it's thank God Joe Rogan is standing up.
What
for
is
folks and
4
spreading all these
hours?
ideas.
We can't really know. Time is a construct.
Time is everything. Yeah.
All right, this is Jordan Peterson. We should say that not only has Neil Young left the Spotify
platform.
Barry Manilow did too.
I know. We need like Billie Eilish to do it for them to.
Spotify makes millions of dollars, millions upon millions of dollars. I mean, I think you got to buy $1 million. My understanding about Spotify's deal with Rogan now is if you want to buy advertisement on Rogan, you need to buy across their platform, and you need to spend $1 million.
Well, the deal with Rogan's $100 million. So,
in fact, I am starting to think that some of our advertising is being inhibited because of the advertising changes that they have made. Because mid-roll, I think, is now owned by Spotify or XM Sirius or somehow. I don't know. They just keep eating. But not directly in that respect, but I think like in the way that they've changed their business model. But here is Joe Rogan with Jordan Peterson. And this is more gold. But what is gold?
Didn't happen in the Columbine case.
They knew it was wrong.
No.
What are you saying?
No, they were doing it because it was wrong.
Right.
They didn't just know, but that's different,
wrong
right?
is the wrong word then.
No, it isn't. It's exactly right. They were out to do the maximal amount of harm in the minimal amount of time.
But they felt it was the thing to do, and they didn't think that there was something.
No, they thought
that
they
shouldn't do.
No. It's like the Joker.
Right, but
He
they
burns
did it.
the money.
They thought it was something they should do.
No.
But they did it.
Yes.
So they thought it was something they should do.
No.
What are you saying?
I'm saying
Listen,
they
if they
decided.
but they wanted to do it.
Yes.
And they did it. So it's something they should do.
No. No, they did it because it was the worst thing they could think of.
Right, which is what they should do because they wanted to do the worst thing they could do.
Yes, they wanted to do.
Yes,
we can agree on
that's
that.
what I'm saying.
You know what's amazing, honestly? Like, so many people have probably said this about this clip, but it's just like two, freshmen in college just getting super high.
Yeah.
And I think what they're both reaching for here is they wanted to do something that was transgressive. No, I've come up with a new concept where people do things because they knew they shouldn't, but they wanted to do something they knew they shouldn't do, that they knew that they shouldn't want to do. That's a completely new concept in the history of man that no one has ever thought that before. And how do I know?
I watched the Joker.
No, I'm wearing a tux.
Oh, well. But that's the point, right?
That's why I'm wearing a tuxedo, because I'm going to an opening night of every idea that I've had. This is the first time that anyone has ever thought that people do transgressive things. But I don't use the term transgressive because other people thought of that. I use the term doing things that they didn't want to do because they knew it was wrong, but then they did them anyways. Because it was wrong.
It's the funniest, the idea that your pedantry is leading you anywhere. it reminds me of like trying to read. There's this philosopher Kenneth Burke who is probably more used to get into than Jordan Peterson, but he writes like this: like rhetoric is rooted in an essential function of language itself, a function that is wholly realistic and continually born anew. The use of language as a symbolic means of inducing cooperation. It's just like it's professor speak, but Peterson, like, it's funny when Peterson does it because his like references are to the Joker and to Frozen and to like things that basically like teenagers.
Oh yes, but
it's like the Joker, which proves that no one's ever thought about this before, except for the guy who wrote the Joker.
Yeah, except for the entire blockbuster film.
I went to high school with the guy who wrote the Joker.
Oh really?
Yeah. In fact, I was in a movie that he wrote at AFI. And I was the lead. And in fact, I played a clown.
Wow.
It was silent. Yeah, so take that.
Put that
Jordan
in your pipe and smoke it.
It's like the Joker. That's why what I'm saying is profound, because it was in a major motion picture. It's, God.
You watched the climate clip, though, of him?
Oh, yeah.
We played that yesterday.
I mean, it's honestly, it is, I had these conversations in college where it's just like, if the word means nothing, then there is nothing and everything is the same.
Well, that's what, right.
You can't discuss climate because it's everywhere. It's all around us.
I said yes.
We have no ability to assess because it's everywhere. You see?
I see. You're not even...
Okay. So if we have just white noise, we just hear nothing. Like there's so many sounds, then there's no sound. See? That's your mistake. There you go. I was waiting for you to talk so I can interrupt you.
I know. That's why I didn't give it to you. That's called being transgressive.
That silence was very loud. You see. That's what that was. Just unbelievable. Actually, since we're talking about lunatics, Charlie Kirk, they all got to go to the anti-vax. You will see this. They've all got to go to the anti-vax. Because the anti-vax stuff, for the most part, is really just a key sign of the grift. Because that's just where the money is.
A key sign of the what?
Of the grift.
Oh, yeah.
Politics are just not compelling to broad audiences right now. They're just not.
You don't want to be the one saying, hey, let's be against the Build Back Better or those sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
If you're on the right, you don't want to be talking about getting against the Build Back Better. But right now, look, and I've been doing this now for 16 years, more. I don't know how many years. And 18 years it'll be in a month or 2 or 3 months. And there's an ebb and flow into this. And there are some periods of time where people are sick of politics. They don't want to talk about it. People who are interested in politics, like for the audience of this show, the daily audience has basically remained, has been here week in, week out. Maybe it's grown a little bit over the past year and a half or so, but the differences are people who dip into politics for different times. And this is just one of those 6 to 8 month periods of time where people are not. It'll probably pick up as their races come because most people perceive politics just to be about elections. And you can see the grift when they're talking about anti-vax. They'll be off this at one point. But here's Charlie Kirk bringing on an anti-vax activist, I guess. I don't even fully understand how one can be an activist in this way.
Mm-hmm.
She's like supposedly a doctor, but like I don't really believe that.
Like, where is the data? I know that people have self-reported that they have gotten injured by the vaccination. And there are certainly instances, again, we know they're less than COVID, probably less than the flu, of myocarditis. And we should also say, myocarditis has been made out to be this huge, huge thing. There are heart ailments that are problematic. But you know what you're supposed to do when you get myocarditis? If you're a kid or an adolescent, you got to take it easy for a couple of days.
Yep.
Okay. Here is anti-vax activist Sherry Tenpenny and Charlie Kirk.
I really believe that there's strong ramifications of what this COVID shot does to our genetics as a genetic modification technology, that our God-given genes, that there's one of us. You know, when your dad's sperm and your mom's egg came together and God said, spark of life, there's never been another one of you ever, and there won't be in the future. It's God's gift to us, and Yahweh is actually written right across of our genes in the Hebrew language, in the Hebrew letters. And these COVID shots are actually going in and snipping those sulfide bonds.
Pause it for 1 second. We may have to go back. I just want to be clear what this doctor has said, that the words Yahweh in Hebrew are written across our genes by God. Now,
I mean, it is messenger RNA. That's what the M stands for.
I'm trying to
dipshit.
Sort of just parse this. Okay, what if I just concede, yes, of course, Yahweh is written across our genes. Everybody knows that. But that doesn't prove that the vaccine is erasing it. But wait a second. So go back. Here we go.
In the Hebrew language, in the Hebrew letters, and these COVID shots are actually going in and snipping those sulfide bonds and removing Yahweh from our genes. And actually, when you do all the spiritual, biblical texts and saying, our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and we volunteered to contaminate it, I think that that's a really, really big deal. And I think that those people who've taken the shot and start looking around at all the different ramifications of that, it's going to become a spiritual revival, Charlie. And about that people need to get back to God, and because they got vaccinated for one of two reasons, either out of fear or convenience.
Do we not have more of that? I would like to hear how Charlie reacts to that.
He's going to look for it.
I mean,
this is narcissism. Like that, there is an inherent narcissism to these anti-vax activists, right? Because there's never going to be anyone like you. You are God's special, special baby. And Yahweh's message is written across your... If that kind of changes the uniqueness of each individual, if everybody has Yahweh's letters written on our DNA. But regardless, that's part of it too. They feel that they do not have to participate in society to protect other people because they are God's special child. And only they are the people enlightened enough to see that perspective.
I think God is sending us a message that once his name was translated into the English script of YHWH, he wanted us to see it in the genetic code. So I think she's onto something.
What's really, really disturbing is, I guess that's why Hebrew got developed in the first place, was because we wouldn't have had Hebrew had we not had it written on our genes. Okay. People should be selling Yahweh genes.
Oh, yeah.
That should
you can bedazzle it with the words of Yahweh.
That is just bat crap crazy. Bat crap crazy, but makes sense.
I'm trying to even follow the arguments of people, because ACT and G are the genetic stuff, right? I don't know why.
Oh, so you're out there and you say you don't know anything about genes, but you're perfectly confident saying that Yahweh is not written on our genes and that on our DNA, and that the vaccine is not erasing it. Okay.
So bigoted.
Unbelievable. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 614 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. It's Michael from Central Ohio.
Michael from Central Ohio. What's on your mind?
Hey, so I'm a nurse practitioner, and I've worked in these COVID ICUs for, I've been in ICU for several years now, but, it just really gets to me sometimes that when people don't want to count deaths, if they have like one more extra thing or they died of another thing, it's something else than COVID. So all the time we get COVID patients. In fact, we've doubled the size of our unit in a lot of cases, and we just run with 30-40% more patients that just have COVID. This is a new thing on top of what we did before, and we have our peaks and valleys just that go along with these surges. And man, so when I get a COVID patient and the only thing that is wrong with them is COVID, and I hope that all hopes that it's just COVID, because a lot of the time it's not COVID ultimately that ends this person's life. It's another organ failure, a renal failure, a concomitant bacterial pneumonia after you get COVID. And I do, being in Ohio, work with people that, thank God not the majority of them, but that say, hey, I don't want to, this shouldn't count as a COVID death because they died of a bacterial pneumonia after they got COVID. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because I see it in front of me. And I don't know, I feel like I'm being gaslit all the time.
So let me just tease this out a little bit, because the point is that COVID becomes the midwife for another ailment that ends up being the specific cause of death. So that COVID is still a but for, we would say in legalese, for that death. In other words, if this person came in and they had, let's say, one functioning kidney, many Americans have that. You only really need one, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's only functioning at 75%. This renal failure can be. Well, I guess the way that you could say it is like, in terms of like sepsis, for instance, right? Somebody could have sepsis.
Sure.
It could seriously injure your kidney. The sepsis could recede, but your kidney could be so injured at that point that it could ultimately kill you.
Yeah, these things, they combine, and you end up with multi-organ system failure, and oftentimes your body can't survive that. It makes you particularly susceptible if you get COVID to getting a bacterial pneumonia after that. Flu was the same way prior to COVID. It wasn't necessarily the flu that would come in, but these concomitant infections, these post-flu infections that would come in and do some real damage in an already damaged lungs. And COVID, we see that same thing. It just ravages your lungs, and you get these bacterial infections, or you get septic shock, which can lead to renal failure. And we're dealing with all these things. They're there for 20 days. We can take them out of COVID isolation after that, but they're no longer infectious. So they're there for months on end, and then they pass away because all of these organ dysfunctions that persist, and they get infections. And well, it's after 21 days. They're no longer in COVID isolation, or don't count. People around me will say, oh, it's not a COVID death. And not the majority of people I work with, I should say. It's some, and then I see it on the news that people say that I shouldn't count it as a COVID death, but then when it came in with COVID, exacerbated all these things. And like I said before, I hope that COVID, when they come to the ICU, is the only thing that I have to deal with them, because those can be the best, like single organ issue can be the best outcomes when you get critically ill or by the time you get to the ICU.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I've heard people say that more people die with prostate cancer than from prostate cancer, as an example. because prostate cancer many times is manageable. But prostate cancer does not, in most instances, create these secondary infections that end up taking a life on their own. I mean, COVID ends up being the catalyst for a lot of these deaths that people want to pretend is not a function of COVID.
Yeah, and I see it every day, and I see people like Jimmy Dore that go out and say that stuff, and it burns me up, and I feel like I'm crazy. And
well, dude, let me just tell you this. I can tell you this. I don't know for a fact that Jimmy is crazy, but I can tell you that if either one of you is, it is him.
Yeah.
He may also just, he may have also other incentives and other catalysts that are working on him at any given time. But hang in there and really appreciate the work you're doing. I can't imagine the stress that you have been going through over the past 2 years, and I hope we're getting close to the end of it, or at least the end of the worst of it.
I mean, I hope so. I haven't seen any flu this year yet, so it's all COVID. It's awful.
All right. Well, maybe if we get lucky, people will continue to wear masks a little bit during flu season, and you won't see as much flu after this is behind us. But hang in there. Really appreciate the call.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I mentioned this a little bit on Left Directing Post Game, but I'm actually having, and it's very mild, and I'm lucky it's not, what other people are going through, but long COVID symptom in that I'm having an eczema. I went to a dermatologist, but like a weird eczema outbreak, and the dermatologist asked, like, oh, have you been sick recently? I'm like, yeah, I had Omicron like 3-4 weeks ago, and he's like, yeah, that's what it is. Like, so you have these things that, like, I have slight eczema on my feet, and now it's something much bigger because you've had what is some people are calling a cold, psychopathically irresponsibly, is actually a pretty strange disease.
Yeah. There was a study, and it was only, I think, 200 people, and it was just released the other day about like 4 different factors that can lead to long COVID. And it can strike in many different ways. They're not going to really fully understand this stuff for at least years. A couple of years. Yeah. So really tricky. Let's go to the phones one more time. Calling from an 858 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Steve. I'm calling from San Diego.
Steve from San Diego.
I wanted to talk. Hi there. I want to talk to you about the Green New Deal. And the Green New Deal has some real problems if you look at it in detail. And our modern kind of industrial society is built on steel, concrete, plastic, and ammonia. And you can't make any of those things with wind or solar. It's just engineering-wise, it's just not possible. And so, in a sense, the Green New Deal is taking us away from what we really need to do for anything sustainable. Because you just look at the engineering, and the numbers just don't work out.
What do you mean in terms of like you can't get the temperatures you need to create steel and plastic? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you can't make plastic comes from petroleum,
right,
as a material.
Yeah.
The only way you could substitute that is with bioplastic. And some things that you can make like on a lab bench or on, say, a pilot plant scale, you can't make at full scale.
Right.
And I know this from family experience. I might have the greatest drug for cancer, and if I can make it at, say, the milligram scale or the kilogram scale, it doesn't mean that I can make it at the kiloton scale.
Right.
There's a lot of nonlinearities. That's the problem with bioplastics, and it's the same for concrete, and it's the same for steel. You need temperatures that are so much higher than what you can get even from a nuclear power plant. The numbers just don't work out. And for ammonia comes from natural gas, from the Haber-Bosch process. You just can't do it without natural gas. You need high temperatures and you need hydrogen. The only way you can get hydrogen without using natural gas is from some kind of electrolysis process, and that's incredibly energy intensive. And it's just a sad reality that the Green New Deal is just not going to get you to where you want to be. And I know that that's kind of shocking. You need kind of a gateway drug to kind of understand this. And I think that the two best gateway drugs that I've found are Rachel Donald. She has a podcast called Planet Critical. I think she's from Ireland, a real bona fide lefty. And also Professor Nate Hagans, I think he's at University of Minnesota, another bona fide lefty. You know, they're not shills for the fossil fuel industry or something like that. And if you follow them, they give the best comprehensive view of the energy, economy, and environment that I've ever seen, plus the psychology as well. And the Green New Deal is just not going to get you there. Well, and I don't think that AOC has the engineering background, or Senator Markey has the engineering background to be able to see what can be done, not at a pilot plant scale, but at the ton scale, gigaton scale of concrete, steel, plastic, and ammonia.
Do you think our battle against climate change right now is primarily, fundamentally, initially an engineering one?
No,
I don't
no,
either.
Not.
I don't either. So
I think the problem is overshoot.
No.
It's too many people.
No.
Go ahead.
The problem with our dealing with climate change right now is not overshoot. The problem of our dealing with climate change right now is undershoot. The problem is political. It is the way that it's capitalism, the way that our economy is organized. Do I think that engineering can find a solution ultimately? Yes, I do. That's not our problem right now. Our problem is our problem is not an engineering one at this moment, because the Green New Deal is nowhere close to passing. And so the concern is unfounded. We have a political problem right now, not an engineering one.
Well, Sam, even if the Green New Deal passed, say the Green New Deal passed and you could allocate trillions of dollars to make it work, it can't work. Even if it was passed, even if you had all kinds of money.
But my point is,
it's not possible.
Listen, okay, if your argument is that we cannot deal with climate change because of our reliance on fossil fuels, and it's all completely useless to try, and you do not deny the reality of climate change, which it sounds like you don't.
Absolutely not. I do not deny it.
So why wouldn't we attempt the Green New Deal? I mean, if you're going to be fatalistic, why wouldn't you overshoot? Or is your argument that really the political impediment to dealing with climate change is that the people who are advocating for change do not have the engineering right?
Here's the thing. The Green New Deal does not get you to a sustainable future. There are other directions that you can go to that will get you to a sustainable future, and that's what you need to do. What you need to do is this climate change in our industrial society, it's not a problem that has a solution. It's a predicament where you're going from the frying pan or fire. There's no solution. What I would recommend, and what other people are recommending, is that you try to de-industrialize the world economy. The world economy has to become smaller. The number of people on the planet has to become smaller. We have to do things that are genuinely sustainable.
Well, so so you're saying the Green New Deal won't work because it won't allow us to make steel and plastic and cement in the amount that we are making now. And
ammonia.
And ammonia. Okay, so it sounds to me like if we impose the Green New Deal, it will put a cap on that type of activity that you're talking about that is problematic. How's that different?
Well, the thing is that if you put a cap on ammonia, okay, let's say hypothetically the Haber-Bosch process went away, half the people on the planet would starve.
I mean, I think
that is.
I think we're also looking at half the people on the planet. Actually, I mean, I don't want to get gloomy here for folks, but the gloomiest of predictions I've heard is somewhere around 80% of the world's population will be eliminated by climate change over the course of the next century or so. So, I mean, I would agree that there's a pick your poison quality to it, but maybe we don't have as much cement or steel, and maybe we do reserve it for potash or ammonia. But
yeah, we're going to be going back to bat guano. The thing is that the harsh reality is that fossil fuels are depleting. I mean, anyone, a kindergartner with a crayon and a napkin can understand that fossil fuels are not going to last forever. But just because that's true, and just because climate change is true, doesn't mean that you can substitute it with renewables.
I think. Listen, I think you might be right, but what you're talking about is a political problem. And so if the idea is that, and let's say you're absolutely right, I would still argue that your solution is not remotely close to happening. The problem that we have with climate change is fundamentally a political one. It is the way that we organize society. And so if what you're saying is true, let's just, for the sake of argument, say that I'm agnostic as to the reality that you're suggesting. Then the only way to deal with it is to approach these changes as if we can substitute things, because that's the only way we're going to get movement. Well, yeah, I mean,
Sam, that's why I'm talking about gateways. Professor Hagen's bona fide lefty. He goes
Dude, wait a second. Do you think the problem in this country right now to addressing climate change is from a left perspective?
No, I'm saying that.
But you're telling me you're trying to sell me the gateway by telling me that there's a leftist scientist out there who's going to be my gateway to this. I got news for you. I'm not the person you need to sell that we need to react to climate change.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that he's the gateway to the people who will explain to you that the Green New Deal is not going to be even close to what.
But I'm explaining to you that when I take the gateway to the people who are going to explain to me that the Green New Deal is, we're not going to be any closer to dealing with climate change. In fact, we may be further away. What I'm suggesting to you is it's a political problem. It is a political problem. And the question is, how do you get the political will to react to this scientific reality?
Well, the AOC and the people like Senator Markey, they're not responding because they're taking the country in the wrong direction.
That is not why people are not responding. There is not a concerted political movement out there that is saying we're not going to follow the Green New Deal because it is the engineering doesn't work out.
There are people who are starting to do that.
Yes, you and the two podcasts you listen to, and that may be the case, but I'm telling you, there are tens of millions of people, and really, more importantly, billions of dollars that are inhibiting a response to climate change that is not a function of the engineering possibility of producing the amount of ammonia we're going to need through renewables. That is not the political dilemma that we are facing.
Well, I think that part of the reason why people in government are saying that is because that's the only lens through which they can see the world. They haven't taken the engineering, they haven't taken the physics.
I understand.
They don't know the thermodynamics.
I understand. That may be the case, but I am telling you that lack of addressing of climate change is not a function of what you're talking about. But I appreciate the phone call. I'll check out the podcast because it'll be an interesting thing to do as we watch the climate change happen, and people begin to die because of famine and whatnot and this and that. It'll be an interesting thing to do, but I am quite sure that that's not going to bring about what we need in terms of change. But I appreciate it. Thanks for the call. Prairie Fire Kowalski. In reference to the last caller, this isn't necessarily true. We can get hydrogen to do most of those processes. If the incentives exist to make hydrogen by separating from oxygen and water was scaled up to meet the demands, it would be more economically viable. As I've pointed out, we can sequester carbon faster than we can emit with current agricultural technology. I think the yearly cost would be $400 billion, or half the military budget. It would also increase domestic spending, so it could grow the economy. We can make more than enough food post-meat without as much artificial fertilizer. The Great New Deal, the Green New Deal, I think he means, is more of an outline. And if anything, it's given people the ability to think critically on those issues, to develop solutions. I am mostly focused on the agricultural side, since that's what I know. Left is poggers. I mean, to look at this as fundamentally an engineering problem is to be an engineer.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
This is a political problem. All right. So, we don't have much time left, do we? Today's Friday, son of a gun. Darn it. All right, let's do this. Let's just put this up. On Wednesday, I invited a big force the vote guy, big Jimmy Dore fan, and I call him a Jimmy Dore fan only because he brought up Jimmy Dore during the conversation we had, and apparently a lot of his videos have been about us smearing Jimmy Dore.
Funny.
One was even about us smearing him, and I didn't know who he was at the time, but whatever. This guy, it's been fascinating to watch because we had some technical problems, or he had some technical problems. It's unclear why his camera went off, but it did during the thing.
I feel like that's when he started reading from something. But
well,
I'm not
there
sure.
was a video, there was audio muting. We had apparently had muted him during when we were playing, I think, the clip of him saying that fascism will come to town via the squad. He didn't want to address that ultimately. But we asked him to unmute himself. He didn't. Maybe he didn't know how to work Zoom. I mean, that certainly, I mean, he's of a younger generation, but maybe he doesn't need to use Zoom. I learned to use Zoom because
unmuting and keeping his camera on were difficult for him.
Yeah. And, but nevertheless, what has been fascinating to me about this is how many, tweets he was generating. Not that many, let's be clear.
Yeah, I thought,
the lack, actually.
Well, there was a lack.
After Jimmy or other people, I feel like there's been more of a backlash that I've seen in my notification. I haven't really seen anything, for me at least.
But it was interesting because so many of these tweets seem to be similar. Someone else noticed this. So put this up. I guess at one point, I don't know exactly how this happened. But you'll notice this tweet by this guy, Void Burn. I have never seen a more thorough evisceration in my life than this debate. Jackson obliterated Sam Seder. Sam looked lost and bewildered by the arguments of the great Hinkle.
Well, let's be real. You always look bewildered.
Well,
that's kind of your resting face.
I'm not contesting any of this. I'm reading it because the prose is interesting.
Great Hinkle.
The Great Hinkle. Jackson from the dive continues to show a superior understanding of, and then continued, and he must have written it in the next one. But then the funny thing was,
Ron Paul Maoist.
38 minutes earlier, wrote, I have never seen a more thorough evisceration in my life than this debate. Jackson obliterated Sam Seder. Sam looked lost and bewildered by the arguments of the Great Hinkle. Jackson from the dive continues to show a superior understanding of ... continued.
Wow, they're both doing identical tweet threads.
Now, then I'm thinking, like, maybe I was eviscerated. Maybe this was continued. But then also, there's
names are very interesting. Eurasianist, Jaegerist, a lot of little interesting names.
Yeah.
Folks.
Seems to have a...
Ralph Therese. I have never seen a more thorough evisceration in my life than this debate. Jackson obliterated Sam Seder. And then Eurasian Jaegerist. I have never seen a more thorough evisceration in my life than this debate. And I don't know if these are bots. Wait, do we have more? Oh yeah, let's pop up at the next one. I mean, I don't know if these are bots or real people. Maybe they're just real people who are using a script. But that was, I thought, pretty impressive that he got all these people to just use the exact same script. This wasn't our...
There's a clip. I don't know if we have that, but he was like, yeah, we did it so good. I need all of you out there tweeting about how good we did.
Quote of the day?
I have never seen a more thorough... Who was the original person who did this? This original quote. Keep going. At least that person had the... the same people, it looks like.
Not a ton.
Not a ton, but they were putting out the same script, which I thought was interesting. But this was the part that I found really disturbing. And... I don't know that I was tagged in this, but somebody, I think, like, tagged me down the thing with Twitter and this and that. And, sometimes I see these things, sometimes I don't. And particularly on Thursdays, I try and stay off the Twitter. But this caught my attention. Do the top tweet first. This is from Jackson himself. And he goes, I thought all of Sam Seder's fans liked my parents because they roasted me on Twitter. Wasn't so much that they roasted him. Jackson tweeted out that my parents told me these lies about imperialism and Santa Claus, and then Dad came in and says, like, ooh, well...
They busted him on his bullshitting.
Yeah. He called him out publicly.
Don't lie.
He never
like
said
this.
that stuff, right?
And but now they're sending messages like this to them, ? I guess I broke them so much yesterday that they changed their small minds. And so this Anteros sent you a direct message. Anteros being the user. Bet you're getting a lot of death threats today, you effing idiot. Now, this presumably was sent to his parents, maybe his dad, I would presume. And that...
damn, Anteros.
Yeah, Anteros. And I found that... I found that disturbing.
Especially because we were portraying his dad in a positive light. We enjoyed that he was calling out his son.
Even if you were portraying his dad in a negative light, which I wouldn't do. Yeah. But I like to think our audience can be, relentless and, tweeting at people like this. But this type of thing is not even remotely appropriate. And maybe you delude yourself about the people who listen to your show, but I wouldn't. This would be very disturbing to me. And then someone wrote, honest question, how do you make this connection to Seder? And somebody else said, you mean immediately following the debate, the ass whooping of Seder on the same day? Scratch his head, honest question, how did you not get the connection to Seder? And then someone else, and I didn't notice this at first, to be honest with you, someone else did a screen grab of this
account,
Anteros account. Can you zoom into that? Go up to the top of your thing and zoom in. Go up to the top of your, keep zooming in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, Anteros. And he's got 50 following and 259 follow. And so go to the likes. His like was on January 26th, I don't care, Sam Seder. That was written by Jackson Hinkle. He liked Jackson Hinkle's tweet. And then his next like was also on January 26th from Kathy's Arc. Don't scroll. 4 companies in the Arc universe report today, and there are 4 stock tips.
Okay, so it's
And
stock tips.
It's a stock tip. Anteros like that, and then
not seeming like an MR fan.
Yeah,
that's weird. And then January 24th, the next the next most recent was Kathy's arc again. Some other stock was at an all-time high volume traded today, 45 million shares with 2 hours to go. That's a weird like. And then let's see what's the most recent like after that. January 22nd, it's Jackson Hinkle again.
Weird.
That's
China's the number one global reliever of poverty. Joe Biden's America is the global. Now, I don't know what to make of this other than one of two things. It's either somebody who just likes stocks and Jackson Hinkle tweets, because either they only like this stock trading thing in Jackson Hinkle, or that's what their job is, or they're bought. But it's also possible that one of Jackson's fans threatened the dad because they saw the tweet. For the first time.
And Jackson was too stupid to understand that it was his own fan trying to come to his defense against his own dad.
My God. But to be fair, listen, I don't know if Jackson felt like he got a fair hearing yesterday on his point. He wanted to say that, I guess his argument was that we're not critical enough of the squad. I think at one point I said, you want to primary them? Primary them. He's like, I wouldn't do that. We need to hold them to account. Let's play this clip of Jackson holding the squad to account by calling out the fact that they don't seem to have a problem with the COVID concentration camp the Democrats are setting up, and B, they're the vanguard of fascism in this country. So play the clip.
Are Democrats the new fascists with their COVID concentration camps? I think that, as I've said before, and I literally got, it went semi-viral on Twitter when I said it, but I stand by it 100%. I said that
probably why
fascism in the United States will come from progressive, like woke circles, like the Squad, for example. I truly believe this is just further proof of that. This is just further proof of that. So, yeah, I think it will. I think it is already, right?
That is how you hold them to account.
Oh,
you call out when they are promoting COVID concentration camps and the woke squad-like fascists are coming for you. You got to call it out. Otherwise, you're just doing the bidding
of Antifa,
of the DNC.
Wait.
I don't know. That's the thing. I can't tell. Are we doing the bidding of the DNC when we call out the squad for bringing fascism to America, or are we not doing the bidding of the DNC by doing that because they give them preferential treatment? This is the thing. It gets a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
Step two is always the tough part.
It's complicated for folks who haven't read up on their Marxist-Leninism, American patriotism. So
there you go. All right. Shoot, we got so many people who've been hanging on the phones for so long, but it's 2:44. All right, folks, I'm sorry. We do not have any more time for calls. I'm going to have to do, we got a lot of IMs too. All right, I'm going to do 10 IMs, then we're going to get out of here. Between the 101 and the 5, Breyer's book is going to suck balls. It's already out there. Shower it with Crowder. Sam, I'm writing this to learn and not challenge, but it looks like your videos on inflation haven't aged well. Do you still think people have enough from government in monthly payouts to avoid the impact of inflation? And has it always been a media hyped issue, or do you empathize with the people who face inflation's worst impact more now? Inflation things have been more durable. The rise in prices have been more durable than I thought they would. But I still contend that we're dealing with not a demand that can't be met by production capacity, but rather a logistics issue. And B, I will say that once this is passed, we're going to see the value of those wages that were rising. But yes, I think people are hurting. And in fact, we have a graph that just put up this graph. This is the first time in January that we're seeing this dynamic. And I'm convinced it's because of two things, of the reduction in unemployment insurance and the cutoff in child tax credit payments. See this big jump in January 2022, the share of U.S. adults who lack savings to pay basic expenses for a full month. It jumped by 7 percentage points in January. So I think still that we're going to see inflation to the extent that we're seeing it begin to diminish. There's a lot of things conspiring here. Lumber, there's beetle problems and, a pine disease in Canada. But things like oil is coming down, although may go back up with this Ukraine-Russia thing. But yes, I think to a certain extent, I was wrong in the durability of this. But I was also, Omicron, I think, has added to this. You still have the zero COVID policy in China. And the Biden administration is now looking at sick leave for COVID. But yes, I do think it's been a problem. I do think it was hyped by the media at that point, but I do think now it is proving to be more durable and more real. Nick Nitro. The progressives should act like the Tea Party argument was a childish fantasy. The Tea Party was still about representing the 1% with more open racism. The progressives have a very different fight ahead. If you look at the literally tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars expended by the Koch brothers in support of the Tea Party versus the money that AOC can raise for the squad, it's just an absurd analogy. Project Unfuck the World. What up, MR crew? You've had a few guests this month that have nearly put me in an existential crisis, but I'm okay. We need more David Feldman on the balance it out. The work never stops. Left is best. Boo. Uh-oh. This is too big. I know my story is probably an extreme outlier. I've loved my life in the pandemic. I haven't had to go to work for an asshole for 2 years now. I can only do this because I have a sugar mama that supports me. We live in a pretty nice house. Okay, that's good. I wish everyone could have this life and nobody has to die unnecessarily for it. But it has opened my eyes more than ever that we need a revolution. All right, well, all right, good. That's a good response to that situation. How about a shofar from Matt Bender for a really successful launch of his new show, Scam Economy, last night?
Very, very, very exciting.
By the end of the live post show, Bender seemed floored by how big of a response he's already getting. He also cracked the top 10 technology podcasts on Apple. That is exciting.
Very, very exciting.
Long overdue. Matt is destined for great success. Just a matter of time. Rahm Emanuel, for Disney, start preparing your kids for the fact that you're going to spend many hours waiting in lines. Bring your own water bottles. Oh, okay, good. Good tip. Evan Flo. The AM Quickie is literally the only email I read in its entirety every morning. Where are we? Boomer humor. Sam, I've been listening for MR for over 10 years. You need to stop lying to your audience. There is no proof that Jackson Hinkle was buying likes on Twitter. Some hardcore fan of yours just made a weird video about it that proves nothing. You also have no proof. Well, I didn't say he was buying likes on Twitter. I said he put out a script. You also have no proof that Jackson isn't a principled Marxist. I
don't have any proof he is.
I didn't say.
Piss off. I don't care how long you've been listening. This is annoying.
What would you like me to tell all the terminated Chateau Marmont hotel workers fighting for their livelihoods when they ask me why you won't sign the boycott pledge or support their struggle after repeated requests? I'll sign the boycott thing. Where is it?
You've been avoiding it, Sam. You've been running away every time we tried to get you to sign it. This person is on to you.
I have not been to the Chateau Marmont in 2019.
Yeah, because you're avoiding this
maybe
stuff.
18
I know,
years.
right? You saw this coming.
Because you want to turn your back on the workers.
You turned your back a long time ago. 20 years ago.
Send it to majorityreporters@gmail.com.
I don't think people. Do you understand? Like, Sam has a life and is busy. Sometimes he can't do everything that like the viewers are asking of him.
We also have 223,000 unread emails in Majority Reporters, so please put like urgent or something in the subject line.
Is that
like
literal? Is that the figure? Yes. Oh.
223,017 unread emails. So please put something in the subject line.
And I will tell you, that is one of literally 15 email addresses that I have. Benny Boy from Iowa. What Hinkle failed to understand is that a congressperson doesn't gain anything from sinking legislation. They exchange their votes for concessions. In other words, you help bills pass to get concessions. Hinkle has no theory of power, so he'll never understand that. There is no theory of power or change in associated with anything those people talk about. Winnipeg Craig, will Matt be talking about Gould's great insight into fish?
No, we do not get into either his insights into the banned fish or the species of animal fish.
Winnipeg Craig also learned, today I learned Yahweh hates twins. At least the identical twins who he cursed with non-unique DNA. Astir Methifis, that will automatically duck the Gus mic when you talk. Can help with routing if need be.
We'll have a new system in the next few weeks.
Send us an email, though, just in case. Maybe you can walk us through some of that. Bird Gang Dave. Emma, the ignorant fascists who are protesting the NFL don't seem to be doing a very good job at it, according to the ratings from last week's divisional round. Flaccid Hinkle seems to be like somebody PragerU would pay to make left-wing YouTubers lose cred. Thanks for exposing you.
I mean, I think so.
I can't help but think that there is some on the right sort of realize that, like, if you can promote this dude in some way.
Like a lot of people who might follow like stock trading tips all day, but have a leftist sock puppet account.
Right.
Those sorts of fans.
You have no proof of that.
Yeah, it's circumstantial.
John Dropout. If the Green New Deal passes, there is still a petroleum output. There always will be. We can't eliminate it completely as not a failure of environmentally conscious policy. Desperation to do nothing can drive people to pretend the current proposals are useless or wrong-headed.
Yep.
So wait, we can't have the Green New Deal because this will destroy our food production, but his solution is wholesale deindustrialization? Pretty sure that bottom out food production. Sometimes.
Also, what should the Green New Deal lead with regards to depopulating Earth? Like, what's the top line policy there?
All right, 3 more. Yahweh, don't erase the tramp stamp I put across your jeans. Sanders Chomsky 84. BB Boomer Sam, I can't be sure those eviscerating tweets aren't botted, but it sounds like a spicy copy pasta to internet native.
What?
I don't know. War on Christmas veteran. As a chemical engineer, I agree with your caller that stated much of the current industrial processes fundamentally depend on fossil fuels, but these are far from the majority of what fossil fuels are currently being used for. We could address those issues after the easier ones. Additionally, his reliance on a Malthusian solution of population reduction is a smooth-brained gateway to eco-fascism. And the final IM of the week. Jordan Meterson. Bonafide lefty from way back. If I can't do everything, then it can't do anything. All right, folks. Matt, Bradley, Emma, good job this week. See you on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there.